Chapter 866. Yang Yin wasn't hallucinating. The figure that she saw flying over was Murongyu. In fact, Murongyu and Fantong had already arrived and saw the scene of Yang Yin being humiliated. Murongyu was famous for being protective of his own people. He was generous and protective of his own people. According to his character, if it was any one of Shengzhen's people, he would have already walked out and killed them with a punch. However, although Yang Yin had been following him since the Yuan wasteland continent, in Murongyu's heart, Yang Yin wasn't considered as one of his people. He didn't come out immediately because he wanted to see if Yang Yin would give in or change her mind. In fact, Murongyu had already expected that Yang Yin would be suppressed by the Heaven Alliance in the Tiandao sect. Murongyu had left for dozens of years, and he might have the intention to test Yang Yin. When he saw that Yang Yin would rather die than give in, Murongyu finally got a satisfactory answer. However, Yang Yin didn't expect that because of her persistence, she would finally become one of Murongyu's people. She wasn't far from being able to soar to the sky. Murongyu walked out from the dark and waved his hand to pull Yang Yin over. Then, the life force rushed into Yang Yin's body. Before Yang Yin could react, all the injuries she had received before had already healed. Moreover, her strength seemed to have increased. "How dare you touch my people? You're courting death." Murongyu looked indifferent as his eyes swept across the faces of those people. His eyebrows were full of killing intent. "Courting death? How dare you meddle in the affairs of the Heaven Alliance? Are you tired of living?" A late-stage true god looked at Murongyu and sneered. His body swayed, and he stretched out his big hand to punch Murongyu's face. "These guys are really tired of living." Fantong walked out from the shadows. When he saw that this fellow actually dared to attack Murongyu, he could not help but shake his head and laugh. Through these years of interaction, Fantong already had some understanding of Murongyu. Murongyu even dared to kill people who were several realms stronger than him. How could he possibly be afraid of trash like this? At the same time, Fantong also knew. The reason why Murongyu dared to make a move without any scruples was not because of his existence, nor was it because of the dragon carcasses in the Hichu Luoshu world. With Fantong's ability, of course, he still couldn't beat Murongyu. However, if Fantong were to use his life-saving trump card, it would be more than enough to destroy the Heavenly Dao sect. However, Murongyu did not rely on this. Even if Fantong did not follow and did not have the dragon carcasses, he still dared to kill these people. "All of you kneel down," Murongyu shouted coldly. His big hand suddenly stretched out, 5 fingers spread out, and then pressed down fiercely. Plop! Plop! A strong force descended from the sky. Suddenly, the people nearby, except for Murongyu and the other two, were all forced to kneel on the ground. Especially the expert in the true god realm. At this moment, he was even more terrified. Murongyu was able to directly suppress him. Just how strong was he? At least the late true god realm. At this moment, Yang Yin finally came to his senses. She looked at Murongyu with a face of shock. Her heart was incomparably shocked. She still remembered that when she first met Murongyu, Murongyu was only in the middle true god realm. His realm was far inferior to her. However, how many years had it been? Murongyu's power was already so terrifying that he could suppress a real god with one hand. "Murongyu, what realm has your power reached?" Yang Yin was shocked, but in the end, she could not help but ask. "Middle true god realm." Murongyu did not speak, but Fantong answered. "Middle true god realm." Yang Yin was stunned. In a few decades, he had increased by 3 small realms, and he had even crossed over a big realm. At this moment, Yang Yin's outlook on life was shattered. She looked at Murongyu as if she was looking at a monster. "All right, don't be shocked. From the time you chose to follow me, I told you that you would not regret it." Murongyu smiled faintly at Yang Yin, then looked at the few people from Heaven Alliance who were kneeling on the ground. Under Murongyu's strong suppression, these people were all prostrating on the ground, including the real god. "Whether these people live or die, it's up to you to decide," Murongyu said faintly. There was a flash of ruthlessness in Yang Yin's eyes. If it wasn't for Murongyu's timely return, she would have already died. For those who wanted to kill her, killing intent flashed across Yang Yun's face. Bang! 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 Yang Yun did not hesitate. She took a few steps forward, unleashed her power, and killed the people in true god realm with a palm strike. As for the last real god, Yang Yun was not being merciful in sparing his life. In actual fact, it was because she was unable to kill him with her current power. Hence, she looked at Morongyu. Morongyu nodded and pointed at the body of the real god. Suddenly, the real god's realm began to drop rapidly from real god realm to late true god, middle true god, and then there was no more then. He was killed by Yang Yun. From the beginning until the end, these people could not even say a word. In fact, it was not that they did not want to say anything, but they were suppressed by Morongyu and could not speak at all. Decisive in handling matters, ruthless and merciless. I like it. However, beauty, if you had hesitated for a moment, I'm afraid your score in Morongyu's heart would have dropped by a lot. However, Morongyu seems to be very satisfied with you. Fantong walked over and said to Yang Yun with a smile. Morongyu was indeed very satisfied. Yang Yun had the demeanor of a general and could do great things. She was a talent that Morongyu needed. If she hesitated or did not kill those people, even if Morongyu accepted her, she would only be one of Morongyu's many subordinates. Morongyu would not put her in an important position. Yang Yun was startled. She looked at Morongyu's calm face and saw a hint of admiration in Morongyu's eyes. Isn't the Heavenly Alliance the most powerful force in the Heavenly Dao sect? How come there are only these trash? After praising Yang Yun, Fantong was somewhat unhappy. In fact, what he hated the most was this kind of person who enjoyed the resources of the sect, but formed a clique to increase their own strength. If the Heavenly Dao sect was his sect, he would kill this kind of person. Fantong, don't mess around. I have already decided on the Heavenly Dao sect. Morongyu turned his head and warned Fantong. Fantong shrugged his shoulders. Of course I won't mess around. However, why haven't those trash from the Heavenly Alliance come yet? I can't help but want to trample these trash to death. Morongyu rolled his eyes. After introducing Yang Yun and Fantong to each other, he flew towards his own courtyard. At this time, the news of Morongyu's return to the sect quickly spread out in the Heavenly Dao sect. Did you know? That ferocious man is back. What ferocious man? It's that outer disciple who just joined the Heavenly Dao sect and left the people of the Heavenly Alliance. The ferocious man who robbed those people's storage rings. Oh, it's that guy. However, I heard that this guy not only rejected the Heavenly Alliance, but also the Human Alliance and the Earth Alliance. After disappearing for decades, this guy came back with great strength. He just killed a few disciples of the Heavenly Alliance. However, this guy's strength has increased tremendously. It's only been a few decades, but he can easily kill the experts of the true God realm. Do you think the people of the Heavenly Alliance will let him go? Would someone come knocking on his door? For a time, the Heavenly Dao sect was talking about Morongyu. However, the person involved, Morongyu, didn't know anything about this. At this time, he took out a low-grade holy vein and threw it to Yang Yun, saying lightly, Yang Yun, I have a general understanding of your situation. For decades, you have been deprived of the benefits of being an outer disciple. This low-grade holy vein is your compensation for delaying your cultivation time. Originally, Yang Yun didn't know what Morongyu gave her. At this time, hearing Morongyu's words, Yang Yun's body shook violently. The sealed holy vein in her hand fell to the ground. Morongyu, this is too precious. I can't accept it. This was a holy vein. Even if it was just a low-grade holy vein, it was still extremely precious. Even if Yang Yun had been an outer disciple of the Heavenly Dao sect for 1 billion years, the benefits were far less precious than a low-grade holy vein. This is my gift to you. If you really don't want it, I will take it back. Morongyu said lightly. Although a holy vein was precious, Morongyu had always been generous to his own people. I want it. Yang Yun quickly took back the holy vein. She knew Morongyu's temper. If she refused again, Morongyu would definitely take back the holy vein. Seeing Murong Yu give a mountain range to Yang Yun without blinking, Fan Tong showed admiration in his eyes. If Murong Yu had a large number of holy veins, it was normal for him to give a holy vein to Yang Yun without batting an eyelid. However, Fan Tong knew that Murong Yu didn't have many holy veins, only a few. Even Fan Tong couldn't help but admire Murong Yu's generosity for giving it away without any hesitation. However, Fan Tong soon saw Murong Yu looking at him with a smile. What are you going to do? Fan Tong had a bad feeling in his heart. Fan Tong, you should have something like the Breakthrough Realm Pill, right? Give her a few to help her break through the realm. How about it? Murong Yu said with a smile. Fan Tong didn't speak. He turned his big hand, and a jade bottle appeared in his hand. There are 10 Breakthrough Realm Pills inside. It is enough for you to break through. If it is not enough, you can ask me for more. Yang Yun took the Breakthrough Realm Pill with a sluggish face. In her heart, there was a monstrous storm. She knew that Fan Tong was not an ordinary person, but she didn't expect that he would give away such a precious pill. Chapter 867. With the Realm Break Pill and the Divine Vein, Yang Yun, you should be able to break through to the Heavenly God Realm in a short amount of time. You can cultivate here, Murong Yu said, ignoring the dumbfounded Yang Yun. The dumbfounded Yang Yun nodded his head in a daze. Then he began to cultivate. By the way, how is Ling Ling? At this moment, Murong Yu suddenly asked. Yang Yun was stunned and then said with a wry smile, I don't have much contact with her, but her situation is similar to mine. Also, many people are saying that she is your woman. Murong Yu's face darkened and couldn't help but think of the scene when he participated in the Tian Dao sect trial. At that time, because he wanted to check the power sealed in Ling Ling's body, Murong Yu and Ling Ling were very intimate. Many people saw it. It was normal for others to misunderstand that Ling Ling was his woman. He, Yang Yun, is not your woman, but he is being suppressed by the Heaven Alliance. That Ling Ling is your woman. I'm afraid her situation is even more miserable, Fan Tong said with a smile. But his smile was somewhat unpleasant. He really didn't like the Heaven Alliance people. Murong Yu frowned and stared at Murong Yu. Ling Ling is not my woman. After a pause, he continued, but you're right. Ling Ling's situation is worse than Yang Yun's. Let's go and take a look. Like Murong Yu and others, Ling Ling was only an outer sect disciple of the Tian Dao sect. Her courtyard was not very far from Murong Yu's side, but it was not close either. After setting up a few restrictions in the courtyard to prevent people from disturbing Yang Yun, Murong Yu and Fan Tong flew towards Ling Ling. Whether it was in the primordial continent or the dream wilderness, Ling Ling was like an iceberg that kept people at a distance. Of course, because of Ling Ling's beauty, there were also people who were not afraid of death. However, even in the Tian Dao sect, Ling Ling did not change her way of doing things in the primordial continent. If any man dared to harass her, she would attack him directly, although she didn't dare to kill anyone in the natural law school. However, it was still possible to cripple these people. Although they were all true gods, their realms weren't low. Even if their bodies were destroyed, they could still regrow it. However, it would consume their divine power to heal their bodies. Moreover, being beaten up was secondary. The most important thing was that they had failed to woo Ling Ling and had been beaten up instead. How embarrassing! Therefore, after a period of time, not many people came to Ling Ling's place. But today, another group of people came to the courtyard. Scram! Ling Ling's face was filled with rage as he looked at Ling Han, who was standing in front of him. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and he did not bother to hide the killing intent in his heart. Ling Han's expression remained unchanged as he looked at Ling Ling, but his eyes were filled with obscenity and coldness. Ling Ling, don't be so shameless. I know you're not Murong Yu, that trash's woman, but look at what you've become all these years because of him, suppressed by the Heaven Alliance. If I'm not wrong, you only get one piece of low-grade divine crystal every month now. You don't even have one piece, right? These are all given to you by that trash, Murong Yu. But what about that trash, Murong Yu? Perhaps he's already dead outside, or perhaps you don't even exist in his heart. He's probably already forgotten that you exist. And if you follow me, not only will you not be suppressed by the Heaven Alliance, but you'll also get divine crystals and divine origin pills every month. I can also help you break through to the Heaven God tier, or even the Master God tier, because I have the breakthrough pill. As he spoke, a pill the size of a pigeon's egg appeared in Ling Han's palm. It emitted a faint medicinal fragrance. It was the breakthrough pill. Seeing the breakthrough pill, Ling Ling's eyes narrowed. Her cultivation level had been stuck at the late stage of the true God tier. However, because her accumulation of power and comprehension of cultivation level were not enough, she had not been able to break through. And if she did not have enough power, she could use divine crystals to replenish it. In terms of comprehension of cultivation level, she could also use the comprehension pill to increase her comprehension of cultivation level. However, these were both things that Ling Ling lacked the most. Outer sect disciples of the Heaven Dao only got one piece of low-grade, divine crystal and one divine origin pill every month. This was not enough to break through to the next level at all. Of course, ordinary people could still accumulate enough power, because they did not have much other things, but they had a lot of time. Ordinary gods had a lifespan of a few eras. How many divine crystals would they have if they continued to live for a few eras? However, people like Ling Ling were all geniuses, and their cultivation level increased much faster than ordinary people. Moreover, they also needed divine crystals and the like during the cultivation process. If they relied on these basic benefits, it was impossible to break through to the next level at all. Of course, the Heaven Dao sect also had missions. These missions could have all kinds of treasures, pills, and divine crystals. Ling Ling also took a few missions. However, because she was suppressed by the Heaven Alliance, the missions she could take basically did not have much reward. Moreover, there were people from the Heaven Alliance causing trouble. In anger, Ling Ling did not even take any missions. Originally, the Ling Tian Mansion also had people in the Heaven Dao sect, and they were on the Earth Alliance's side. However, because of the relationship between Ling Ling and Murongyu, and also because of Ling Ling's own refusal, she did not join the Earth Alliance. As for Ling Han, he was also an outstanding disciple of the Ling Tian Mansion. After joining the Heaven Dao sect, he was appreciated by some seniors of the Ling Tian Mansion and was put in an important position by the Earth Alliance. Originally, the Ling Tian Mansion also had people in the Heaven Dao sect, and they were on the Earth Alliance's side. However, because of the relationship between Ling Ling and Murongyu, and also because of Ling Ling's own refusal, she did not join the Earth Alliance. As for Ling Han, he was also an outstanding disciple of the Ling Tian Mansion. After joining the Heaven Dao sect, he was appreciated by some seniors of the Ling Tian Mansion and was put in an important position by the Earth Alliance. At this time, he, who originally did not have any thoughts about Ling Ling, suddenly wanted to conquer Ling Ling and make her his woman. Or rather, Ling Han had always wanted to conquer Ling Ling under his crotch. However, he was not as strong as Ling Ling in the past. After being suppressed by Ling Ling at the beginning, he firmly suppressed the thought of conquering her in the bottom of his heart. Now, when he was in power in the Heaven Dao sect, Ling Ling was constantly being suppressed by the Heaven Alliance. Therefore, he felt that his opportunity had come. Therefore, he began to threaten and tempt, trying to conquer Ling Ling's body and mind. Get lost! Ling Ling only glanced at the breakthrough pill in Ling Han's hand, and then shouted angrily again. A cold light flashed in Ling Han's eyes, and he said, Ling Ling, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Now, even if you don't agree, you have to agree. Ling Han was finally angry. He took a step forward and stretched out his hand to grab Ling Han. Since the threat and tempt did not work, he planned to use force. In an instant, a cold, killing intent burst out from Ling Ling's body. Her eyes shot out a cold light, and the long sword in her hand burst out a sword ray that soared into the sky. She slashed down at Ling Han. Chapter 868. Ling Han's eyes flashed with a chestnut color, and his hand shot out. Instantly, a terrifying gust of wind burst out, covering the sky and earth. The terrifying pressure surged towards Ling Ling like a tidal wave. Before the attack landed, the terrifying pressure suppressed Ling Ling. The blood and chi in Ling Ling's body surged like a raging sea. The terrifying pressure pressed down, and Ling Ling's skin felt like it was about to crack. Pong! Ling Han's hand pressed down and directly hit Ling Han's body. Of course, he still wanted to subdue Ling Ling, so he didn't kill him. But even so, Ling Ling was sent flying, spitting out blood in the air. Ling Ling wasn't a match for Ling Han. A few decades ago, in the primordial desolate continent, you were the strongest among the younger generation of the Ling Tian mansion. My strength was far inferior to yours. And now, a few decades later, I'm a god, and you're still a true god. A few decades ago, I looked up to you, and a few decades later, I looked down on you. After sending Ling Ling flying with a palm, Ling Han seemed to be very timely and didn't continue to attack. Instead, he looked at Ling Ling and said coldly. He seemed to be venting the resentment that had been suppressed by Ling Ling for countless years. Indeed, after Ling Han became a disciple of the Heavenly Tao sect, he received a large amount of resources, and not long ago, he used the Comprehension State pill to directly break through to the Heavenly God tier. It was also because of this that he ran over to forcefully subdue Ling Ling originally. He thought that after he broke through to the Heavenly God tier, coupled with the temptation of a large amount of resources, Ling Ling would definitely submit to him and become his everything. But he didn't think that Ling Ling still didn't like him. Ling Ling stood up from the ground and reached out to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. Then he looked at Ling Han coldly with killing intent. In my eyes, you were a piece of trash in the past, and you're still a piece of trash now. You'll only be a piece of trash in the future. Piece of trash? Ling Han laughed loudly, but a tyrannical look flashed in his eyes. Today, this piece of trash will play with you. Let's see how you'll F***CK this piece of trash. As he spoke, Ling Han sent a slap flying towards Ling Ling Pa. The gap between a true god and a god was like a chasm. In front of celestial gods, true gods basically did not even have time to react. Just like Ling Ling, although she knew that Ling Han was going to attack her, she didn't even have time to react before she was sent flying by Ling Han's slap. B***TCH. Ling Han's large hand stretched out and directly grabbed Ling Ling. With a hideous grin, he walked into the house. He was going to force himself on Ling Ling's expression changed instantly. Her eyes were filled with endless anger. However, she quickly concealed her anger and returned to her usual cold self. Since she couldn't resist now, she wouldn't do anything about it. But that didn't mean that she would submit. Instead, she had placed all her killing intent and hatred in the depths of her heart. In fact, such people were the most terrifying. Put her down. Just as Ling Han kicked open the door of the room, a cold voice suddenly rang out in the courtyard. Immediately after, two figures flew over from afar and quickly landed on the ground. "It's you, you little bastard." Hearing that voice, Ling Han subconsciously turned his head. When he looked at Morongyu, he couldn't help but grin hideously. Morongyu frowned slightly. A cold glint flashed past his brow, and his eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at Ling Han. Looking at Morongyu, Ling Han couldn't help but recall the scene in the trial space. Thinking of how intimate they were, the fury in Ling Han's heart surged wildly. "Little bastard, you still dare to appear. Die." Ling Han put Ling Ling down and roared loudly. Then, he pounced towards Morongyu. The pressure of the Heaven God tier instantly exploded, rushing towards Morongyu like a rolling flood. Seeing Ling Han charging over like a mad dog, Fantong looked at Morongyu in shock. "You have a grudge against him?" "I don't know him." Morongyu shook his head. "Oh, he must have burned his brain." Fantong nodded, looking as if he had just realized something. Seeing that Morongyu didn't seem to take him seriously at all, and didn't even have the intention to dodge, and even commented on him with Fantong, the fury in Ling Han's heart became even more terrifying. "Die!" Ling Han roared loudly, and punched fiercely towards Murong Yu's head. A cold glint flashed past Murong Yu's eyes. He took a step forward and similarly punched out, colliding fiercely with Ling Han's fist in the air. Has this brat gone mad? He's only in the middle stage of the true god tier, and he actually dares to exchange blows with senior brother Ling Han, who's in the heaven god tier. Ling Han's companions were also members of the Heavenly Dao Sect's Earth Alliance. They all looked at Murong Yu as if they were looking at an idiot. They had already seen the difference between a heavenly god and a true god when Ling Han suppressed Ling Ling previously. And Murong Yu's cultivation level was even lower than Ling Ling's. Maybe he thinks he can kill an enemy above his level. A young man from the Earth Alliance laughed loudly, his eyes full of disdain. But very quickly, the smile on his face disappeared, and what replaced it was shock and disbelief. Because when Murong Yu and Ling Han's fists collided in the air, the expected scene of Murong Yu being sent flying by Ling Han's punch, or even being blasted into pieces with one punch, didn't appear. On the contrary, they saw Ling Han being sent flying by Murong Yu's punch. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. Apart from Murong Yu and Fan Tong, even Ling Han was dumbfounded. This isn't real. Ling Han's face was full of shock as he saw Murong Yu's terrifying power surge into his body. With a kacha sound, his fist directly shattered. With a pung sound, Ling Han's entire person fell heavily onto the ground, his eyes still filled with extreme terror. I remember now. Back then in the primeval desolate continent, you seemed to want to kill me? Murong Yu suddenly said, then took a step forward. With a flash, he appeared in front of Ling Han. Then he stepped out, stomping towards Ling Han's head. Die! Ling Han finally reacted at this moment. With a lazy roll, he dodged Murong Yu's foot, and, at the same time, struck out with his palm. Surging energy gushed out from his palm and headed straight for Murong Yu. Your power can't withstand a single blow. Murong Yu sneered and punched out again. However, this punch was a little different from the previous one. Murong Yu's fist was filled with lightning. Even in the void around Murong Yu, streaks of lightning appeared, and a series of pai li pa la sounds that made one's scalp go numb sounded. This time, Ling Han's fist wasn't the only thing that was shattered. His entire body was engulfed by the endless lightning. The terrifying lightning surrounded his whole body and began to destroy everything inside Ling Han's body. Break! Ling Han was an elite of the heavenly god tier, after all. After the initial panic, he calmed down. The power in his body surged out and formed a huge shield on the surface of his body. While protecting his physical body, it also repelled the power of thunder and lightning. This is too boring. You played with this kind of trash for so long. Wouldn't it be better to just kill him directly? Fan Tong shook his head and said somewhat speechlessly, Played? Murong Yu is playing with Ling Han? Hearing Fan Tong's attack, the few people from the Earth Alliance all looked at Murong Yu in shock, and Ling Han's face, which was originally charred black by the lightning, became even darker. Everyone, attack together, kill this bastard for me. Ling Han was furious, but he also knew that he was no match for Murong Yu, so he began to gang up on him. Try moving if you dare. I don't mind sending you on your way. The people from the Earth Alliance didn't move, and Fan Tong glanced at them indifferently. The aura of a heavenly god was released and enveloped the few people from the Earth Alliance. Instantly, these people felt as if there was a huge divine mountain pressing down on their heads, extremely heavy. They were only true gods, and were no match for a heavenly god. Moreover, they believed that if Fan Tong wanted to kill them, it would only take an instant, or even not an instant. Since that's the case, then just kill. Murong Yu smiled faintly. He stretched out a large hand and slammed it down on Ling Han. Kill me. Ling Han's face revealed a mocking expression, but soon he couldn't laugh anymore. Because when Murong Yu attacked, an extremely strong aura of death appeared in his heart. He didn't know why, but he knew that he was dead for sure. So he panicked and shouted loudly, Murong Yu, you can't kill me. I'm an inner disciple of the Heavenly Dao sect. If you kill me, The sect won't let you go. Moreover, my master won't let you go either. My master is a heavenly monarch. Heavenly monarch? Should be the upper echelon of the Earth Alliance? No wonder you could get the breakthrough pill. However, from the moment you faced Ling Ling's opponent, you were already sentenced to death. Mu Rongyu smiled coldly, and then, under Ling Han's terrified gaze, his large hand had already slapped down. Pooh! With a sound, the arrogant Ling Han was slapped into a pile of mud. All that was left was a shimmering godhead. The people of the Earth Alliance all looked at Mu Rongyu in a daze. They didn't know how Mu Rongyu, who was only a middle-stage true god, could kill a heavenly god. In an instant, these people's worldview collapsed. All kinds of knowledge were shattered by Mu Rongyu's punch. Scram. Scram as far away as you can. In the future, automatically take a detour when you see us. Otherwise, I'll beat you up every time I see you. Seeing these dumbfounded trash, Fantong couldn't help but shout coldly. These people finally came to their senses and flew away as if they were fleeing. Ling Ling's unchanging expression, which hadn't changed even when she was about to be humiliated by Ling Han, revealed an excited expression at this moment. Sure, Mu Rongyu nodded calmly. Okay. Ling Ling was so excited that her delicate body started to tremble. Because of that ball of energy inside her body, she couldn't truly feel at ease. She wanted to become stronger so that she could expel that ball of energy from her body. However, at the same time, she also knew that as her cultivation level increased, the chances of that ball of energy breaking out of the seal would also increase. Thus, she had always been in a dilemma. She wanted to become stronger, but was also worried that the ball of energy would break out of the seal. She was extremely conflicted. Mu Rongyu nodded, and then Hichu appeared beside them out of thin air. Ling Ling's delicate body suddenly stiffened. A burst of killing intent burst forth, and she looked coldly at Hichu. The power inside her body was instantly raised to the limit, and she looked warily at Hichu. If it weren't for Mu Rongyu's calm appearance, perhaps Ling Ling would have attacked at the first moment. Even though she knew that Hichu's strength was beyond the scope of her understanding, and that he could kill her with a single breath. However, due to her long-term instincts, she still did so. Seeing Ling Ling's reaction, Mu Rongyu sighed inwardly. He now vaguely understood why Ling Ling always kept people at a distance and treated everyone so coldly. This was due to some kind of self-preservation instinct. It seemed that Ling Ling had a story. There is no need for you to look at me with such vigilance. If I wanted to kill you, you would have already died 1,000,000 times over, the young man said indifferently in the face of Ling Ling's vigilance. He is my friend, Hichu. Next, he will help you strengthen the seal in your body, Mu Rongyu said, then nodded at Hichu and left the room. Seeing Mu Rongyu come out, Fantong, who had been waiting outside the room, asked, "How is it?" Mu Rongyu did not hide the condition of Ling Ling's body. However, Fantong had never heard of this matter. Mu Rongyu shook his head. It can be temporarily sealed. However, it can't be expelled. Calm down. When the time comes, I will ask my old man. There is nothing in this world that my old man can't do, Fantong said with a smile as he patted Mu Rongyu's shoulder. Mu Rongyu smiled. Fantong's old man might be very strong, but the power in Ling Ling's body was definitely not simple. Moreover, although Mu Rongyu did not know who Fantong's old man was. However, to be able to kill the Bloody Hand, who was at least a heavenly emperor-level powerhouse, with a single blow, just how strong was his old man? There was no need to say. How could a person of this level casually attack? Moreover, Ling Ling had nothing to do with the other party. If Fantong's old man really attacked, then it would be strange. After all, whether it was Mu Rongyu or Ling Ling, in his eyes, they were just ant-like existences. She hasn't come out yet? Fantong pointed at Ling Ling, somewhat surprised. She is still inside, strengthening the seal. You didn't do it? Fantong was instantly shocked. He thought that Mu Rongyu had sealed Ling Ling. This was because he did not notice the existence of a third person in the room from the beginning to the end. Of course, he could not have discovered it. Hichu's strength was so much higher than his by so much. Moreover, Hichu did not enter the room from the outside. Thus, the two of them sat in the courtyard and waited. A day later, Murongyu sensed that Hichu had returned to Hichu Luoshu. Using his divine will, he saw Hichu sitting cross-legged on the ground, recovering. His face was slightly pale. Seeing this, how could Murongyu not know that this was because he had used too much energy? Hichu, if you have used too much energy, you can use the holy pulse at any time, Murongyu said telepathically. I did not use much energy, but I used too much of my mental energy. However, the seal has been strengthened. In a short period of time, that ball of energy will not be able to break through the seal. I will recover first, Hichu said, then quieted down. At this moment, the door of the room opened. Ling Ling walked out slowly with a happy face. Beauty, it seems that you are in good spirits. Seeing Ling Ling walk out, Fan Tong's eyes lit up. Although Ling Ling was extremely beautiful before, she always had an appearance of being 1,000 miles away from others. Moreover, she always gave off a gloomy feeling. However, although Ling Ling still looked cold, the iceberg seemed to have started to melt. The gloomy and oppressive feeling on her body had also disappeared. What replaced it was a relaxed and cheerful feeling. At this moment, Ling Ling was indeed much more relaxed. Since she had discovered the ball of energy in her body, this was the first time she felt relaxed. Ling Ling looked at Murongyu. She knew that all of this was given to her by Murongyu. Moreover, she did not know why, but she was suddenly filled with confidence in Murongyu. She felt that this seemingly ordinary man could definitely suppress and even expel the ball of energy in her body. Thank you, Ling Ling said to Murongyu with a sincere expression as she walked over. Murongyu only smiled faintly. However, Fan Tong chuckled and said, Beauty, just a thank you is enough? Shouldn't you show some appreciation? For example, say something like giving yourself to me. Scram! Murongyu's face darkened. He turned around and threw a punch at Fan Tong. Fan Tong chuckled and took a few steps back, avoiding Murongyu's attack. At this moment, a rare blush flashed across Ling Ling's icy face. When the icy beauty revealed such a bashful expression, Murongyu and Fan Tong couldn't help but be startled as their attention was drawn to her. However, Ling Ling's next words woke the two of them up. From now on, I am yours. My life is yours. If you want my body, I will give it to you. After saying this, she turned around and left. On the other hand, Murongyu and Fan Tong were stunned. This ice beauty is quite valiant. Fan Tong chuckled and looked at Ling Ling, who was slowly walking to the other side. His eyes flashed with a strange light. Murongyu's face also darkened at Ling Ling's words. What do you think? Do you feel the desire to conquer her body and mind? Fan Tong poked Murongyu with his hand and chuckled strangely. Scram! Murongyu glared at Fan Tong. He did not have any feelings for Ling Ling. Even if Ling Ling really appeared, he would not accept this kind of gratitude. You are the ones who killed Ling Han. At this moment, an angry roar came from afar. Then, a figure landed in Murongyu's courtyard. A terrifying aura exploded from his body like a torrential flood, sweeping in all directions. With a punk, the walls of Murongyu's courtyard and the gate outside were directly turned into dust under this terrifying pressure. Even Ling Ling was affected by this terrifying power. The blood in her body churned, and her face turned pale. With a pu sound, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Huh! A blinding light exploded from Fan Tong's body. The shield on his body was actually activated by this terrifying aura. Chapter 870. Over God. The only person present who was not affected by this aura was Murongyu. This was because ever since he regained control of Hichu Luoshu had always been in a state of being used. It was like an inner armor that was attached to Murongyu's body. This was because there were far too many powerful experts in the God realm who could crush him to death. Murongyu could not help but be on guard against any sudden attacks from these experts at all times. Even the pressure of a heavenly king-stage draconic beast was unable to affect Murongyu in the slightest, let alone a mere main god. However, Murongyu was still furious. What if he did not have Hichu Luoshu? With his own strength, even if he did not die from the shock, he would definitely be severely injured. Just like Ling Ling, Murongyu took a step forward and shielded Ling Ling behind him, blocking the terrifying pressure from the newcomer. Although it had only been an instant, Ling Ling was already severely injured. Not only were there shocking wounds on the surface of her body, but the meridians in her body had also been shattered. In just a few more breaths of time, Ling Ling would definitely be killed. The pressure of an overgod was enough to kill a true god. A stream of life force surged into Ling Ling's body, quickly healing her injuries. At the same time, Murongyu glared at the young man, the overgod Ling Song. From the moment you stepped into this courtyard and released your aura, you were already dead. His voice was as cold as ice that had been frozen for 100 million years. The temperature of the surrounding area seemed to be affected as well, dropping significantly in an instant. With just the three of you trash, the newcomer stood there with his head held high. His aura surged as if he was looking down on the heavens, as if the heavens were the boss and he was the second. His eyes were filled with intense disdain as he looked at Murongyu and the other two. Huh. At this moment, Fantong laughed out of extreme anger. I've seen many people who don't know what's good for them, but I've never seen anyone who comes forward to die. You're one of them. Murongyu looked at Fantong. At this moment, Fantong no longer had his usual lazy aura, nor did he look angry. He only had a cold expression on his face. Murongyu knew that Fantong was truly angry. If Fantong got angry, the Heavenly Tao School might be destroyed. Murongyu was shocked. Although he didn't know who Fantong's father was, Murongyu felt that his father must be an extremely overbearing person. Ling Song actually dared to kill Fantong. If his shadow appeared, Murongyu had no doubt that he would slap Ling Song and even the entire natural law school to death. The Heavenly Tao Academy was decided by Murongyu, so he didn't want it to be destroyed. Thus, he walked over with Ling Ling. Fantong, let me handle this matter, Murongyu said in a low voice as he patted Fantong's shoulder. This idiot has angered me. I must kill him personally, Fantong said coldly. Murongyu laughed bitterly. I don't want the Heavenly Tao School to be destroyed as well. Fantong was startled, then reacted. All right, I'll leave this matter to you. After Murongyu's reminder, Fantong came to his senses. He definitely wasn't Fantong's match, so he could only summon his father's shadow. He knew very well how overbearing his father was, seeing that Murongyu and Ling Han didn't care about him at all, and were even discussing how to deal with him. Ling Han immediately became furious. Ling Han, a master god, was instantly enraged. His lungs were about to explode from anger. Little bastards, you think too highly of yourselves. Ant-like existences dare to kill a disciple of the Ling clan? You're practically seeking death. As he spoke, he took another step forward, and the aura on his body became even more violent as it pressed down on Murongyu and the others. However, even though his cultivation level was higher, reaching the sky tier, his pressure didn't affect Murongyu and Fantong at all. Moreover, the courtyard behind Murongyu was protected by powerful restrictions, so the pressure of a master god couldn't shake it at all. Seeing that Murongyu and Fantong, and even Ling Ling, were completely fine under his pressure, the disdain in Ling Song's eyes was still strong, but there was also a sliver of graveness and greed. He knew that the reason Murongyu and Fantong could resist his pressure was because they had treasures on them. Naturally, Ling Song began to feel greedy. A disciple of the Ling clan, Murongyu sneered and pointed at Ling Ling, who had already entered Fantong's light barrier, and continued, could it be that she's not a member of the Ling clan? She was once a member of the Ling clan, but now she's a traitor of the Ling clan, Ling Song said calmly. Ever since Ling Ling joined the Tian Dao sect and didn't join the Earth Alliance and was suppressed by the Heaven Alliance, she was no longer a member of the Ling clan. Otherwise, why would she be so miserable in the Tian Dao sect? After all, The Ling clan's influence in the Tian Dao sect wasn't weak. Murong Yu looked at Ling Ling, but he saw that Ling Ling was still as calm as an ancient well. She was completely indifferent to the fact that she was a traitor of the Ling clan. Well, with her personality, she only wanted to increase her strength and suppress the power in her body, so she didn't care much about her clan. Especially after Hichu strengthened the seal on the power in her body, she had secretly sworn to follow Murong Yu. From now on, she was Murong Yu's person. Like Yang Yun, she was Murong Yu's person, but she wasn't Murong Yu's woman. Brat, a member of the Ling clan, isn't someone you can kill. Die. Ling Song shouted coldly, took a step forward, reached out his hand, and slapped down on Murong Yu's head. He looked calm and relaxed, as if he didn't care at all. Indeed, a master god could kill a true god with just his aura, let alone with his own hands. He could pinch Murong Yu to death with just a finger. Murong Yu didn't make a move. Even if he used the power of 3 godhoods, he wasn't a match for Ling Song. However, he was fearless. If you stop immediately, leave this place, and avoid us when you see us in the future, I can spare your life. This is your only chance. Otherwise, you'll die without a doubt. Murong Yu took a step back, avoiding Ling Song's palm, and said coldly, "Haha." Ling Song laughed loudly, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Brat, don't think that you're invincible just because you killed Ling Han with a treasure. In my eyes, you're even less than an ant. With a cold smile, he used his finger like a sword and slashed down on Murong Yu's neck. You don't have a chance. Murong Yu smiled faintly. This time, he didn't continue to retreat. At this time, Ling Song panicked for no reason. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying pressure descended from the sky. It was as if an immemorial divine mountain was crashing down on them. A strong aura of death instantly enveloped Ling Song. At this moment, Ling Song saw death in his eyes. He didn't know why he suddenly had this feeling, but Ling Song didn't have time to think about it. Immediately, he turned to flee into the distance. Too late. Murong Yu's indifferent voice instantly announced Ling Song's death. Pooh! An extremely terrifying pressure came crashing down. With a horrified expression, Ling Song was blasted into smithereens after an explosion. The aura of a master god could kill a true god. However, elites of the master god tier could also be directly crushed into a bloody mist by the aura of a heavenly king tier. Yes, the aura of a heavenly king tier. The aura of a dragon beast. Just now, Murong Yu had controlled the Hichu Luoshu to open a crack and release an aura. Just this aura alone was enough to kill Ling Song, the arrogant, pretentious prick. He died just like that. Seeing Murong Yu grab Ling Song's godhead, Ling Ling's expression was dazed. Just now, she had personally experienced Ling Song's terrifying aura. That arrogant Ling Song, with the heavens as the boss and him as the second boss, was actually so weak that he couldn't even withstand a single blow. Beauty, it's not that Ling Song is too weak, but that Murong Yu is too strong. Not to mention a mere master god. Even if a heaven monarch came, he would be able to crush him to death. Ling Ling was shocked. Could it be the heavenly king tier? Looking at Murong Yu, Ling Ling's eyes were filled with shock. I'm only at the true god tier. In terms of tier, I'm not as good as you. Murong Yu smiled slightly. But in terms of strength, I can't even catch up. Ling Ling added in her heart. Then, a hint of worry appeared on her face. One of the ancestors of the Ling family is a higher-up of the Earth Alliance. We killed Ling Han and Ling Song, so I'm afraid we've already angered him. If you're not at the Heavenly King tier, you're just courting death. Even if it's a Heavenly King, if he dares to make a move, I'll let him die without a doubt, Fan Tong said calmly, not taking the higher-ups of the Earth Alliance seriously at all. Ling Ling's eyes were filled with shock and disbelief as she looked at Fan Tong. She felt that Fan Tong was bragging a little too much. On the other hand, Murong Yu knew that Fan Tong truly had the ability to do so. What bullsh asterisk T Heaven Alliance or Earth Alliance? This Tian Dao sect was messed up by these trash. You might as well go all the way. Find their leader and kill him directly. Then, You can take over, Fan Tong said calmly. However, Morong Yu shook his head. Even if he relied on the Dragon Beast's pressure and Fan Tong's strength to kill the Heaven Alliance, Earth Alliance, and even the Tian Dao Sect's Sect Master, so what? With Morong Yu's current strength, he couldn't control the Tian Dao Sect at all. On the contrary, it was possible that the Tian Dao Sect would fall apart. Moreover, Fan Tong couldn't always be by his side. Moreover, who knew when the Dragon Beast's corpse's pressure would disappear? At that time, with Morong Yu's strength, he wouldn't be able to control the situation at all. When I have the strength, I'll slowly get rid of these tumors, Morong Yu said indifferently. His calm demeanor made it seem as if this was the most ordinary thing in the world. Rumble, at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly burst out. At first, Morong Yu and the other two thought that someone was coming to kill them again. However, they soon discovered that the aura was actually coming from inside the house. Moreover, it wasn't very strong. It was only the Heavenly God Realm. Heavenly God Realm. Yang Yun had broken through. In just a few days. Chapter 871. Heaven Sect, Qinghong Peak, in the main hall. More than 10 people with strong auras and qi and blood were sitting on both sides of the main hall. However, no one dared to sit on the main seat in the main hall, because only one person was qualified to sit on that seat. That person was the leader of the Heaven Alliance, who was called Young Master Tian. Qinghong Peak was the headquarters of the Heaven Alliance. The people in the main hall were the top management of the Heaven Alliance. They were the core members. Everyone, how should we deal with that outer disciple? Chu Lin, the second in command of the Heaven Alliance, glanced at the crowd and said lightly, "Just kill him." A core member of the Heaven Alliance said lightly with a look of disdain. The person beside him, called Fan Tong, is not simple. Another core member said with a frown, Morong Yu had already angered the Heaven Alliance by killing people from the Heaven Alliance one after another. If it were someone else, the Heaven Alliance would have already made them disappear. However, they were worried about the power behind Fan Tong. They knew that Morong Yu and Xian Yu had once made a scene in the mysterious Star City and almost killed Miss Xian Yu in the end. With Xian Xing's strength and Xian Yu's vindictiveness, they must have already known that Morong Yu was a disciple of the Heaven Sect. However, they did not dare to go to the Heaven Sect to ask for him. Why? Were they worried about the Heaven Sect? Of course not. Although the mysterious Star City was only a city, its strength was not as strong as the Heaven Sect. However, its strength was not weak either. Moreover, Morong Yu was only an outer disciple in the Heaven Sect. If Xian Yu was willing to ask for him, the Heaven Sect would probably give Morong Yu away. However, they did not do so. Of course, it was not because of Morong Yu. It should be because of Fan Tong. Although the Heaven Alliance was the strongest in the Heaven Sect, could it be compared with the mysterious Star City? No. Therefore, they did not dare to do anything to Morong Yu. However, they could no longer tolerate Morong Yu's repeated killings of the Sky Alliance's members. If they continued to tolerate it, the people of the Natural Law School would think that the Heavenly Alliance was afraid of Morong Yu. This made the Heaven Alliance lose face. "We can't kill him, but we don't have to do it ourselves if we want to kill him," said another person coldly. His voice was filled with killing intent. "What do you mean?" Everyone suddenly turned their heads and looked at the person who spoke. Hypertoxic continent. Hiss. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. While these people from a Heavenly Alliance were discussing how to kill Morong Yu on the Red Dragon Peak of the Natural Law School, Crimson Dragon Peak was the headquarters of the Earth Alliance, just like the Heavenly Alliance's Qinghong Peak. At this moment, some people had also gathered in the main hall. Morong Yu must die. Ling Hong's eyes narrowed as killing intent flashed in his eyes. He was one of the higher-ups of the Ling family in the Earth Alliance, and he was one of the core members of the Earth Alliance. He was extremely powerful. Not long ago, he received news that Morong Yu had killed 2 disciples of the Ling family in succession. Both of them had decent aptitudes and were people that Ling Hong had focused on nurturing. However, they were killed by Morong Yu within a day. Morong Yu didn't just kill the 2 of them. He also killed Ling Hong's face and even the Earth Alliance's face. In fact, although Murong Yu had rejected the Earth Alliance's invitation at the beginning, he didn't join the Earth Alliance. However, the Earth Alliance didn't go against Murong Yu. However, after Murong Yu killed the two of them, he was now standing on the opposite side of the Earth Alliance. He should be relying on that Fantong, said a core member of the Earth Alliance. If the Heaven Alliance could know what had happened to Murong Yu recently, they naturally knew as well. However, like the Heaven Alliance, they didn't dare to directly attack Murong Yu. However, sometimes killing didn't require one to do it personally. I'm going into seclusion too. On the other side, in Murong Yu's courtyard, Yang Yun had already come out of the house. Her realm had risen from the late stage of true god to the early stage of heaven god, although her aura hadn't stabilized yet. However, her strength was more than 1,000 times stronger than before. However, the moment she saw Yang Yun, Ling Ling mentioned that she wanted to go into seclusion too. At the same time, she had already walked into the house. Murong Yu didn't have any objections to this. It was a good thing that they were stronger. Thank you. Yang Yun walked in front of Murong Yu and still couldn't hold back the excitement in her heart as she thanked Murong Yu. At the same time, she handed the divine vein that hadn't been completely refined and absorbed to Murong Yu. All right, there's no need for such formalities in the future. As for the divine vein and the remaining comprehension pills, just keep them, Murong Yu said calmly. Yang Yun opened her mouth to speak, but at this moment, a voice was heard and interrupted her. Brat, you're Murong Yu? Not bad. As soon as you came back, you killed those trash from the Heaven Alliance and Earth Alliance. I admire you. You can be my follower in the future. An arrogant voice rang in Murong Yu and the other two's ears. Murong Yu and the other two were instantly stunned. They looked towards the direction of the voice and saw a 13 or 14-year-old young man with a tinge of childishness on his face walking towards them slowly with his hands behind his back. However, his childish face was now filled with arrogance, and insufferably arrogance, as if he was an emperor. However, when they saw the young man, Murong Yu and Fantong couldn't help but frown. That was because the young man was even stronger than Ling Song and had already reached the Sky Realm. A 13 or 14-year-old Sky Realm expert. Murong Yu and Fantong looked at each other, and confusion flashed across their faces. Of course, they couldn't believe that the young man was really 13 or 14-year-old. As for the childishness on his face, if there was a need, Murong Yu could also look like that. Little brat, go away. Although they didn't believe that the young man was really 13 or 14-year-old, Murong Yu and Fantong still treated him as a little brat. In fact, even if they knew that he was an old monster, who wouldn't treat him as a little brat when they saw his childishness? Hearing Fantong's words, the little brat frowned slightly. He looked at Fantong and sized him up before saying, Brat, you're not bad either. You're in the Sky God realm and barely qualified to be my follower. From now on, you're my follower. As for this little girl, although she doesn't look very good, she could be my maid. Hearing the little brat's words, Murong Yu and the other two weren't angry. Instead, they were happy. Each and every one of them sized up this little brat with an inexplicable gaze. Little brat, which family are you from? It's dark. Your mother is calling you home for dinner. Hurry up and go back. Fantong couldn't help but laugh. Brat, you don't have the awareness of a follower. But seeing that you're young and ignorant, I'll let you off this time. If you do it again, I won't let you off. The young man glanced at Fantong and said with a childish voice, This damn pervert, who knows how old he is, but he's still acting like this. Disgusting. Fantong muttered in his heart. Seeing that Murong Yu and the other two were still looking at him with ridicule, the little brat frowned slightly. A hint of displeasure flashed across his face before he continued. You're not willing to be my follower? Fine. Seeing that you don't know my identity, I won't blame you. I'll tell you my identity now. Stand still and don't be scared by me. Cough. The little brat coughed dryly before saying in a deep voice, I'm the crown prince of the Heavenly Tao sect. The sect master of the Heavenly Tao sect, Tian Xuanzi, is my father. I'm the next sect master of the Heavenly Tao sect. I'll control the entire sect. What Heaven Alliance or Earth Alliance? In my eyes, they're all useless. This crown prince will exterminate them all in a few days. Brat, you're lucky enough to be this crown prince's follower. Why aren't you kneeling down and kowtowing to express your gratitude? After the little brat, who was the crown prince, finished speaking with a proud face, he stared at Murong Yu and the other two. However, what made him disappointed was that Murong Yu and the other two didn't reveal any shock or horror after he announced his identity, nor did they submit. Instead, they looked at him with an indifferent gaze. This made the crown prince very angry in his heart. Little brat, are you trying to compete with us in terms of father? Fantong laughed. Although this little brat's strength wasn't bad, he dared to be so proud. If it wasn't for his father, he would have already been killed by others. However, if it was a competition of father, how many people could compete with Fantong? You're still not submitting to me? The little brat looked at Murong Yu and the other two with an unhappy face. Child, go home and drink milk. If you want us to submit, that's impossible. Fantong waved his hand, once again ordering them to leave. Sigh. The little brat suddenly sighed, his face revealing a disappointed expression. Originally, I quite admired you. However, you actually didn't submit to me. Since that's the case, then you're useless and can die. However, this crown prince isn't someone who willfully kills innocent people. You can kill yourselves. Murong Yu and the other two were amused. However, when they thought of this little brat's terrifying strength and his identity, their hearts sank. With the strength of Murong Yu and the other two, killing the crown prince of the Sky Realm was as easy as flipping their hands. However, this little brat's father was the sect master of the Tian Dao sect. Who knew what realm that fellow was at? If they killed the crown prince, the three of them wouldn't even have time to leave the Tian Dao sect. Not to mention controlling the Tian Dao sect. Go home, wash up and sleep. Otherwise, I'll spank your butt. Murong Yu glared at the crown prince and said coldly, Since you don't want to kill yourselves, then I'll have to do it. The crown prince sighed again and lightly struck out with his palm, pressing down on Murong Yu. A terrifying pressure instantly enveloped Murong Yu and the other two, and a cold, killing intent filled the surroundings. The little brat really wanted to kill Murong Yu and the other two. A cold light flashed past Murong Yu's brows. Towards people who wanted to kill him, he had always killed them, no matter if the other party was a woman or a child, because once they made a move against him, they would be his enemy. Toward his enemies, he had to be ruthless. Chapter 872. Although little brat crown prince was young, at least that was what he looked like on the surface. However, he was much stronger than anyone of Murong Yu's group. If he only relied on his own strength, Murong Yu's group would not be his match at all. They would even be killed in one move. However, other than Murong Yu's group, Murong Yu and Fantong could not be killed so easily. Especially Fantong, it was impossible to kill him. Little brat, you dare to make a move? You're really courting death. Murong Yu said with a cold face. Then, the pressure of the heavenly king stage dragon beast burst out and charged towards little brat crown prince. With a plop, little brat's attack was shattered by the terrifying pressure. Then, the terrifying pressure directly suppressed little brat crown prince, causing him to fall to the ground in a dog-eating posture. He did not die. It was not that the dragon beast's aura could not kill little brat crown prince. In reality, it was because little brat crown prince's identity was too sensitive. Murong, you could not kill him for now. Little brat, you actually attacked us. You deserve a spanking. Fantong laughed sinisterly. He reached out and grabbed little brat crown prince. Then, he pulled off his pants, revealing his white and tender butt. Slap, slap, slap. Fantong raised his hand and ruthlessly slapped little brat's butt. Lowly ant, you dare hit me. You're dead, dead. Little brat's face was full of humiliation. His eyes were filled with incomparable resentment, constantly spitting out flames of anger. Slap, slap. The only response was the sound of big buttocks. This made little brat crown prince even angrier. However, although he was a heavenly king stage expert, the dragon beast pressure still suppressed him. If not for this, Fantong would not even be able to get close to him, let alone spank him. After a series of spankings, Fantong threw little brat Crown Prince out. Little brat, go home, wash up, and sleep. It won't be too late to seek revenge when you grow up. You're all dead. You must die. Little brat Crown Prince looked at Murong Yu's group with incomparable resentment. After leaving behind a ruthless threat, he did not dare to stay any longer and turned around and flew away. He knew that Murong Yu's group had the ability to kill him. If he continued to stay, Murong Yu might really kill him. If this brat is really Tian Xuanzi's son, then things will be a little troublesome. Murong Yu slightly knitted his brows. Of course, he was not afraid of their revenge. He was worried that Yang Yun and Ling Ling would be implicated because of this. Next time, we'll just kill him. If his father dares to show up, I'll kill him too, Fantong said nonchalantly. Yang Yun, go and consolidate your cultivation first. Murong Yu had an idea and walked into the house. In the next few days, whether it was the Heaven Alliance, the Earth Alliance, or the Crown Prince, none of them came to find trouble with Murong Yu. Perhaps they all felt that they could not do anything to Murong Yu. The core members of the Heaven Alliance gathered again on Qinghong Peak. However, their alliance master, young Master Tian, still did not appear. Even that brat, the Crown Prince, fell at Murong Yu's hands. No, I should say that he fell at Fantong's hands. I can guarantee that it was all Fantong's doing, someone said in a deep voice. With Fantong by his side, we never had a chance to kill Murong Yu. It's time to execute that plan. In the Hichu Luoshu world, Murong Yu found Hichu. Hichu, where's the drop of divine dragon blood essence? The divine dragon blood essence was the drop of dragon blood that was obtained from the God Stone. After contacting Hichu again, Murong Yu stored everything in Hichu Luoshu. Today, Murong Yu wanted to study the so-called dragon blood. However, he realized that the dragon blood was gone. It was absorbed by him. Hichu pointed at a huge egg with a strange expression. It was a dragon beast egg. It absorbed it. Murong Yu was speechless. If he did not believe that Hichu would not lie to him, he would never believe that an egg would absorb the dragon blood on its own accord. Or rather, the dragon blood flew over to the huge egg and was absorbed by it. Hichu said with a strange expression. The dragon blood flew over on its own accord. A strange expression appeared on Murong Yu's face. At the same time, a trace of anticipation appeared in his eyes as he looked at the huge egg. The dragon beast was a mix of the immemorial divine dragon and monster beast. It was a monster beast that was between the dragon clan and monster beast. It had a trace of the dragon clan's bloodline. However, the dragon clan's bloodline was extremely low. Moreover, the dragon clan, who prided themselves on their nobility, would never admit that the dragon beast was part of their dragon clan. Therefore, the dragon beast was still a monster beast. However, the dragon beast could also become a real dragon clan, a divine dragon. However, the possibility of this was too small. After all, as the dragon beast was passed down from generation to generation, the dragon clan's bloodline in their bodies would become thinner and thinner. They would only become further and further away from becoming a real dragon clan. However, there would occasionally be a dragon beast that would mutate and have a very rich dragon clan's bloodline in their bodies. As the dragon beast's cultivation increased, its bloodline would become purer and purer. Finally, it would evolve into a real divine dragon. Although a drop of divine dragon's blood essence isn't much, it's enough to change the bloodline of the little dragon beast in the dragon beast egg. I wonder if this dragon beast will become a real divine dragon in one fell swoop. Murong Yu's face revealed a look of anticipation. As for the dragon blood, although it was precious, Murong Yu had originally planned to use it to mess up the constitution of the little guy in the dragon beast egg after it was born. Now it was just brought forward. Moreover, the effect now was better than the effect of the transformation after the little dragon beast was born. Perhaps it can really evolve into a divine dragon. Hichu was also looking forward to it. Is Murong Yu here? At this moment, Murong Yu heard someone calling his name outside the courtyard. I'll go out for a while. Murong Yu's mind moved, and his divine consciousness retreated from Hichu Luo Shu. Then, he stood up and walked outside. Are these bastards done yet? Fan Tong's angry voice came out. Obviously, he was very angry. There was no other way. Since Murong Yu came back, people kept coming to find trouble. Although they were all killed by Murong Yu in the end, this kind of trouble was still annoying. If you push me too far, I'll destroy the entire Tiandao sect. Fan Tong said angrily. Let's go out and see what's going on. Murong Yu was also a little angry in his heart. His face was gloomy as he strode out. Originally, Murong Yu and Fan Tong thought that someone had come to find trouble. But when they came out, they found that these people didn't step into the courtyard. Instead, they stood in front of the gate and looked to the side. They don't seem to be here to find trouble, Fan Tong said. His face looked better, but it was still not good. What's the matter? Murong Yu walked over and looked at the young man in the lead and asked faintly. Now, the sect needs you to complete a mission. The young man glanced at Murong Yu indifferently with a touch of disdain in his eyes. At the same time, he threw a jade slip to Murong Yu. Murong Yu took it and probed it with his divine consciousness. Then, his face turned ugly. Noticing Murong Yu's strange expression, Fan Tong took the jade slip and probed it with his divine consciousness. Toxic continent? Get the heart of the poisonous dragon? Fan Tong's face suddenly became gloomy as he looked at the people in front of him who were gloating. His murderous aura surged. Murong Yu, this is the mission given to you by the sect. You must complete it within 100 years. Moreover, it can only be done by one person. Otherwise, you don't have to come back to the Tiandao sect. The young man in the lead said coldly. Bastard, you clearly want to kill Murong Yu. Fan Tong was angry. Then, he looked at Murong Yu and said, Brother, don't accept this mission. What bullshit Tiandao sect? What's so special about it? If you want to leave the sect, then leave the sect. Murong Yu's face was gloomy as his eyes flickered. He knew what kind of existence the toxic continent was. The toxic continent was like the primordial continent. It was a huge first-class continent. However, there were no gods in the toxic continent. This was because the entire toxic continent was poisonous. Even powerful people only dared to walk around the periphery of the toxic continent and did not dare to go deep. Moreover, they could not stay in the toxic continent for too long. Otherwise, even a heavenly emperor powerhouse could be poisoned to death. In fact, a long time ago, the toxic continent was a continent on the same level as the primordial continent. There are many powerhouses and powerful sections. However, one day, an incomparably terrifying poison enveloped the entire continent overnight. Then, all life on the continent was poisoned to death. Whether it was those powerful gods or ordinary demonic beasts, even plants, they were all poisoned to death. Not a single person escaped from the toxic continent alive. And the toxic continent also became a forbidden area of the divine realm. Even the divine realm's peak powerhouses did not dare to go deep. Although the toxic continent had the ruins of countless sects, if one could really go deep into the toxic continent, then one would obtain an incomparably terrifying wealth. But even heavenly emperor powerhouses could only wander around the periphery. How many people in the entire divine realm could enter the depths of the toxic continent? It was rumored that the reason why the toxic continent was wiped out overnight was because of the Poison Dragon King. Because the Poison Dragon King appeared out of thin air and killed all life on the continent, occupying the toxic continent. Thus, the huge continent was also called the Poison Dragon Continent. And Murong Yu's mission was not only to go deep into the toxic continent, but also to obtain the heart of the legendary Poison Dragon King. Putting aside whether the Poison Dragon King really existed or not, even if it really existed, so what? With Murong Yu's strength, could he get close to the Poison Dragon King who killed the entire toxic continent by relying on poison gas? Very clearly, this was killing with a borrowed knife. Chapter 873. I'll accept this mission. Murong Yu's face was somewhat gloomy as he took the jade slip from Fan Tong's hand. At the same time, he said to those people from Heaven Alliance who were rejoicing in his misfortune. Congratulations on successfully completing the mission. The leading youth said to Murong-yu with a smile before turning around and leaving. Why did this Murong-yu accept it? He clearly knows that it's impossible to complete the mission. A youth asked puzzledly. You're really an idiot. He has to accept this mission even if he doesn't want to, unless he's expelled from the Tiandao sect. But going to the highly poisonous continent is clearly impossible. Moreover, who knows if the Poison Dragon King really exists? Even if it does, Murong-yu doesn't have the ability to take it away. He's dead for sure. Everyone sneered and swaggered off. Why did you accept this mission? You clearly know that it's killing with a borrowed knife. You clearly know that it's impossible to complete. Fan Tong slightly frowned as he looked at Murong-yu. He was somewhat puzzled and even somewhat angry. Murong-yu's expression returned to normal as he said, Is it possible for me to refuse? Of course you can refuse. Or it's fine even if you accept it. At worst, you could just leave the Tiandao sect. Fan Tong frowned. Since I've accepted the mission, I must make a trip to the highly poisonous continent regardless of whether I can complete it or not. Moreover, I've long wanted to take a look at the highly poisonous continent. Murong-yu's eyes flashed with a cold glint. For gods, the highly poisonous continent was a land of death. But at the same time, it was a place filled with opportunities. As long as one could go deep into the highly poisonous continent, one would more or less have some harvest. I'll go with you. Murong-yu immediately shook his head and refused. The highly poisonous continent is too dangerous. You should stay in the Tiandao sect. Help me take care of Yang Yun and the other two. As for me, if I can't do it, I won't joke around with my life. After a bit of preparation, Murong-yu left the Tiandao sect. Heavenly Dao sect, Qinghong Peak. Murong-yu has already left the Tiandao school. Fan Tong didn't come with him. Should we kill him on the way? A core disciple of the Heavenly Alliance asked Chu Lin, the second in command of the Heavenly Alliance. No need. Just send someone to follow him and lead the way. Chu Lin's face flashed with killing intent as he said indifferently. Lead the way? Some people looked confused. Murong, you should know how to get to the toxic continent. Why does he need to lead the way? Haha. Young Master Chu means that we must bring Murong-yu to the toxic continent. Another person said with a laugh. So that's how it is. The eyes of those who didn't understand suddenly lit up as they looked at Chu Lin, their eyes filled with admiration. At the same time, on Crimson Dragon Peak, the members of the Earth Alliance had the same idea. Neither side would send experts to intercept and kill Murong-yu on the way. They would only supervise Murong-yu's entry into the toxic continent. With Murong-yu's true god realm, he would definitely die once he entered the toxic continent. At the edge of the toxic continent, the poisonous gas was the thinnest. Even a true god could barely stay there for a while. The only teleportation formation between the toxic continent and the Dream Wilderness continent stood there. At that moment, the teleportation formation shone brightly. In the next moment, a young man in black appeared on the toxic continent. The young man was Murong-yu. There was no one around. After Murong-yu appeared, he habitually looked around. However, he didn't see anyone else other than himself. Well, at the edge of the toxic continent, where the poisonous gas was thinnest, there was nothing valuable. As for the deeper parts, not many people could go in. Even if there were people, they wouldn't stay there. My power isn't suppressed, but the poisonous gas can corrode my divine sense. Murong-yu didn't leave immediately to go deeper into the toxic continent. After observing for a while, Murong-yu realized that his power wasn't suppressed. However, his divine sense would be corroded by the poisonous gas. Moreover, ever since he set foot on the toxic continent, he was drowned by the poisonous gas. At that moment, the poisonous gas was corroding his body continuously and even entered his body through his pores. This is only the outermost part, and the poisonous gas can corrode a divine sense. If that's the case, how terrifying is the poison gas in the depths of the toxic continent? Murong-yu narrowed his eyes as he looked at the endless toxic continent. Energy surged out and formed a protective shield around Murong-yu's body, enveloping his entire body. It blocked the poisonous gas from corroding his body. However, the poisonous gas was omnipotent. It could corrode everything, whether it was power, physical body, or divine sense. Since I'm already here, let's go deeper into the toxic continent. Muronyu pondered for a moment and flew into the depths of the toxic continent. During this process, Muronyu realized that the toxic continent was no different from other continents. There were animals, plants, and beasts. However, these animals, plants, and beasts all had one thing in common, which was that their bodies were poisonous. After all, they grew up on the toxic continent and had already adapted and integrated into the toxic continent. As he went deeper, the poisonous gas became denser and more terrifying. At that moment, Muronyu had already retracted his divine sense. The corrosion was too strong. As for the power he distributed around his body, it was being consumed rapidly. If it wasn't for the Tree of Life's ability to directly absorb chaos energy from the chaos, Murongyu's replenishment wouldn't be enough. In fact, the toxic continent's heaven and earth origin chi was very dense, even more so than the Dream Wilderness continent. Perhaps it was because there weren't many people cultivating here and absorbing the origin chi. However, Muronyu didn't dare to absorb the origin chi to replenish his depleted power. After all, the origin chi was highly poisonous. If he absorbed the energy, Muronyu would quickly become a poisonous man and be poisoned to death. As his power wasn't suppressed, Muronyu's speed was extremely fast. After a few days, he had already traversed the distance of about a region. The poisonous gas became more and more terrifying. The speed at which the Tree of Life absorbed chaos energy was already equal to the amount of energy consumed. If he continued to go deeper, Muronyu would be in a situation where the energy he absorbed wasn't enough. Moreover, the deeper he went, the more powerful the beasts were. At that moment, a heavenly god realm beast appeared in front of Muronyu. The beasts here were generally stronger than beasts of the same realm on other continents. Moreover, the most terrifying thing wasn't their strength, but their poison. This was a Vajra rhinoceros that was about 10 feet tall. At this moment, it was glaring at Muronyu with an ominous glint in its eyes. Roar! After a furious roar, the Vajra rhinoceros turned into a stream of light and charged forward. The sharp horn on its head flickered with traces of cold blue light, eerie and murderous. Muronyu was in the mood to fight with this Vajra rhinoceros. Moreover, this Vajra rhinoceros's strength wasn't worthy of him making a move. Therefore, with a thought, the dragon beast's heavenly king realm pressure suddenly erupted, directly suppressing the Vajra rhinoceros. Although the Vajra rhinoceros's defense was extremely terrifying, the heavenly god realm was comparable to the heavenly sky realm. However, under the dragon beast's pressure, it still exploded into a cloud of blood mist. What a pity! Muronyu looked at the red dragon fruit tree swaying in the wind not far away inside. The red dragon fruit could increase one's strength and temper one's body. It was a pity that no one dared to eat something that grew on the highly poisonous continent. Muronyu saw many divine materials along the way, but he didn't pick them, because it was useless even if he stepped on them. Hichu, is there a way to isolate the corrosion of these poisonous gases? Can a Hichu Luoshu be isolated? Muronyu didn't continue to move forward, but communicated with Hichu in his mind. Without waiting for Hichu's reply, Muronyu took out the Hichu Luoshu and suspended it in the void above his head. Streaks of yellow airflow fell from the Hichu Luoshu, enveloping Murongyu's entire body. It's effective. After the yellow airflow fell, Murongyu saw that the poisonous gases didn't dare to approach as if they had met the god of plague, and actually automatically avoided them. What's going on? Could it be that these poisonous gases are afraid of the Hichu Luoshu? Seeing this scene, Murongyu was shocked. The Hichu Luoshu is the #1 book in the world. There are only things that you can't think of. There's nothing that it can't do. Hichu said lightly. In fact, as the artifact spirit of the Hichu Luoshu, Hichu also couldn't explain why. Murongyu rolled his eyes and immediately moved forward. However, He did his best to shrink the Hichu Luo Shu as small as possible, trying not to let others discover the Hichu Luo Shu. One must know that he wasn't the only one in the hypertoxic continent. If he encountered an expert who discovered that the Hichu Luo Shu could actually block the poisonous gases, he was afraid that he would immediately attack. At that time, Morongyu wouldn't even have time to react and would be killed. This was why he didn't take out the Hichu Luo Shu as soon as he entered the hypertoxic continent. Instead, he turned the Hichu Luo Shu into an inner armor and wore it on his body. The hypertoxic continent was even bigger than the Dream Wilderness continent. Morongyu sped all the way. Relying on the Hichu Luo Shu to conceal his aura, he easily avoided those powerful demon beasts and flew towards the center. If there were any opportunities or ruins in the hypertoxic continent, then it could only be in the center. After all, the other places had already been searched by those powerful people. Yes, there are ruins of sect ahead. This place is already close to the depths of the hypertoxic continent. Let's go and take a look. Perhaps there will be some gains. The scale of this sect was extremely large, at least stronger than the Heavenly Dao sect. After Morongyu approached, he didn't immediately land and continued to fly towards the depths of the sect. The main members of the sect were usually hidden in the depths of the sect. Senior brother, could it be that the hypertoxic continent really has a poison dragon king? At this time, a voice came from afar. The hypertoxic continent became like this because of the poison dragon king. Master predicted that the poison dragon king's lifespan would run out in the next few years and die. Chapter 874. It's really the poison dragon king? Morongyu, who was hiding in the dark, was shocked when he heard the voice. As far as he knew, the toxic continent seemed to have existed since ancient times. The archaic era, the ancient era, the ancient era, the near ancient era, and finally the modern era. One had to know that ordinary deities only had a few epochs of lifespan. Even the peak existences of the god world couldn't possibly survive from the primordial era until now. Of course, there were still many ancient experts in the god realm. However, to be able to survive from the ancient times until now was already heaven-defying. As for the ancient experts, there was no such thing. Primordial? That was simply impossible. And this poison dragon king actually had such a long lifespan? Morongyu naturally did not believe him. However, after listening to the conversation between the two brothers, Morongyu felt that it was not impossible. Senior brother, even if that poison dragon king really exists, it can't live for that long, right? Since the ancient era? At this moment, the junior brother asked the question that was on Morongyu's mind. You don't believe Master? If Master said it was definitely the case, then it was. However, even if the poison dragon king really died of old age, I'm afraid we won't be able to get close. The senior brother sighed. Having lived from the ancient times to the present, even if he did not cultivate, his strength must be extremely terrifying. Not to mention the poison dragon king, who was already powerful in ancient times. Even if it was dead, the aura emanating from its body must be extremely terrifying. However, the junior brother misunderstood and said, "What are you afraid of? Don't we have antidotes? This poisonous gas has no effect on us." Antidote pill. Morongyu's face sank. Of course, he knew about the existence of antidote pills in the god world. Some detoxification pills could allow one to freely travel back and forth in certain areas of the toxic continent. Originally, Morongyu also planned to buy some detoxification pills, but he was embarrassingly short of money and couldn't afford one. Entering the hypertoxic continent, however, required a large number of antidotes. Fantong might have a strong background, but according to him, he was thrown out by his father to gain experience, so he didn't have many things on him. There was no antidote either. Senior brother, do you think there will be other people coming this time? There should be. After all, we aren't the only ones who know about the existence of the Poison Dragon King. Moreover, there are already many experts from the toxic continent searching for opportunities here. In this way, wouldn't it be very difficult for us to obtain the Poison Dragon's heart? The Poison Dragon King's entire body is a treasure. What we can obtain will depend on our luck. As they spoke, the two people had already passed by Murong-yu. They actually did not discover Murong-yu. Murong-yu's pupils abruptly shrank. This was because he saw that the two of them were actually heavenly kings, super experts of the heavenly king realm. Murong-yu was naturally unable to discern the realms of these two people. He could only sense their auras. Although there was still a huge gap between him and the dragon beast, he was definitely a heavenly king stage powerhouse. Whoosh! Swish! After the two of them had flown for a long time, Murong-yu was about to come out from his hiding place. But right at this moment, a stream of light flashed past his eyes, disappearing in a flash. Super expert. Murong-yu's face immediately revealed a look of shock. The speed of that figure just now was simply too fast. So fast that even with Murong-yu's eyesight, he could only vaguely see that the person was an old man. Damn old man, I'll see where you run to. After the old man disappeared, an angry rebuke came over. Following that, a red and a green stream of light also quickly flew past in front of Murong-yu. Murong-yu could vaguely see that this time it was two young girls. Murong-yu immediately felt somewhat depressed. He had walked around the toxic continent for so many days and did not see a single person. But now, in less than half a day's time, he met 5 people. Furthermore, each one was stronger than the other. Forget about that pair of senior and junior brothers. They were just heavenly kings. But the strength of that old man and those 2 young girls was at least at the peak of the heavenly king realm, or even the heavenly emperor realm. These powerhouses have all entered the depths. Even if I go there won't be any benefits. Moreover, on the contrary, it will expose Hichu Luo-shu. Murong-yu pondered for a moment and decided to leave. Just as he stood up and turned around to leave, he saw a sloppy old man looking at him with a smile on his face on a huge rock behind him. Even though Murong-yu's mental fortitude was strong, he still almost cried out in shock. When did this old man get behind him? He did not notice at all. If the old man wanted to kill him. Thinking of this, Murong-yu's back was drenched in cold sweat. However, Murong-yu did not feel any killing intent from the old man. In fact, the old man's strength was much stronger than Murong-yu's. Even if he wanted to kill Murong-yu, he could not feel any killing intent. But even so, Murong-yu still raised his strength to the limit in an instant. He was ready to enter Hichu Luo-shu or be teleported back to the Yin Huang immortal realm. Young man, don't be nervous. I have no ill intentions towards you. The sloppy old man sized up Murong-yu and said plainly. Murong-yu looked at the old man without blinking. Suddenly, he said, "You're the person who just flew over? The person who was being chased by those 2 young girls?" Hearing that he was being chased, the old man's face was unnatural. He nodded slightly and said, "Yes, I saw you when I passed by." A mere true immortal realm cultivator can go so deep into the toxic continent. You've piqued my curiosity. The old man pointed at Hichu Luo-shu floating above Murong-yu's head and said plainly, "If I'm not wrong, you can go so deep because of this, right?" Murong-yu's heart tightened. All the muscles in his body tensed up. He looked at the old man cautiously and said, "Are you planning to snatch it? Don't be nervous." Although this old man is curious as to why that magic treasure can withstand the attack of the poisonous gas, I won't snatch it. Otherwise, you would have been dead. Murong-yu's body stiffened. The old man was right. However, Murong-yu still didn't let down his guard. If he believed the old man's words with just a few words, Murong-yu would definitely be an idiot. Looking at the old man, Murong-yu's face suddenly turned ugly. "Young man, do you want to know if the others have noticed you? Don't worry. Other than this old man, no one else has noticed you. Your breath concealment technique is not bad." The old man looked at Murong-yu, and his eyes flashed with a tinge of surprise. In fact, if it wasn't for the fact that Murong-yu wanted to come out of hiding at that time, he wouldn't have been able to discover Murong-yu. The true God realm was deep in an area that even the heavenly monarchs and heavenly kings couldn't enter. The breath concealment technique expert couldn't even be discovered by him. He instantly became curious about Murong-yu. Therefore, After he got rid of the two women, he secretly snuck back. Morong Yu heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Senior, I still have things to do, so I won't disturb you. I'll take my leave first. Morong Yu bowed to the old man. His figure flashed and flew into the distance. This old man's strength was too terrifying. It was too dangerous to be by his side. Morong Yu urgently wanted to leave. After all, no one wanted to be by a person who couldn't distinguish between friend and foe, who could kill them with a breath. However, what made Morong Yu helpless was that after he flew away, the old man also followed. Thus, he turned around and flew to the other side. However, the old man followed him again. After a few times, Morong Yu helplessly stopped. Senior, what exactly do you want? Morong Yu's face was gloomy and ugly. My surname is Pei. People call me Godly Doctor. The old man, who was also Godly Dr. Pei, didn't answer the question. Instead, he introduced himself. This time, it was Morong Yu's turn to size up Divine Physician Pei. However, no matter how he looked, he didn't think that this sloppy old man was a godly doctor. How could someone who didn't care about his appearance be a godly doctor? No one would believe it, even if he said it out loud. Moreover, Morong Yu didn't think that a godly doctor would be like this. Kid, you don't believe that I'm a godly doctor? Seeing Morong Yu's doubtful look, Godly Dr. Pei was unhappy. Do you think that those two girls were really after me? Without waiting for Morong Yu's reply, Godly Dr. Pei continued. Those two girls weren't after me. They wanted me to treat their family's elders. However, this old man doesn't like their elders, so I didn't agree to it. However, those two girls didn't give up and chased me for a few continents. At this point, Godly Dr. Pei's face turned bitter. You're really a godly doctor? Morong Yu asked suspiciously. Of course I am. All right, I believe you. In that case, can you leave now? I'm a healthy person, and I'm only a true god. There's nothing to take note of. I'll take my leave now. Morong Yu cupped his fists towards Godly Dr. Pei before leaving in a flash. However, he had underestimated the thickness of Godly Dr. Pei's skin. This guy had followed them again without making a sound. Kid, you actually have 3 god lattices? The two of them didn't say anything. After walking for half a day, Godly Dr. Pei suddenly asked. Morong Yu's body swayed, and he almost fell from the sky. He was really frightened. I only have 1 lightning divinity. How can I have 3 god lattices? Morong Yu turned his head and acted dumb. You have 3 types of energy. There's lightning, space, and another type of energy. I can't tell what it is. However, it's much stronger than the lightning and space energy. Moreover, your space god lattice and lightning divinity are different from ordinary god lattices. Of course you don't know about the primal god lattice. As for the space god lattice, I comprehended the laws and not ordinary laws. As for the lightning divinity, it's the lightning tribulation and not ordinary lightning. Morong Yu said in his heart. However, he definitely wouldn't admit it on the surface. Chapter 875. After discovering that Morong Yu actually had 3 godheads, Divine Dr. Pei's interest in him grew even greater. He practically never left his side. On the other hand, Morong Yu was rather depressed. Both he and Divine Dr. Pei were too strong. He couldn't shake them off unless he teleported back to the Yin Huang Immortal Realm. However, that would expose his life-saving trump card, which allowed him to teleport. As for entering the Hichu Luoshu, Hichu Luoshu's performance was already heaven-defying. If Divine Dr. Pei found out that it was even more heaven-defying, Morong Yu couldn't guarantee that Divine Dr. Pei wouldn't snatch it away from him. Kid, your treasure is too heaven-defying. It's easy to get greedy. Take these antidote pills. They can ensure that you can travel freely through parts of the toxic continent. Divine Dr. Pei tossed a jade bottle to Morong Yu. Morong Yu's face was filled with suspicion as he looked at Divine Dr. Pei. Are you serious? Could it be poison? Divine Dr. Pei's nose was about to become crooked from anger as he glared at Morong Yu. Brat, you don't believe me? My antidote pills are more than 100 times more effective than those sold outside. I don't know how many people have begged me to sell them to them at a high price, but this old man is indifferent. Since you don't want them, take them back." As he spoke, Divine Dr. Pei stretched out his hand and grabbed the jade bottle in Murongyu's hand. Muronyu chuckled. With a thought, he kept the jade bottle in the Hichu Luo Shu. Then Hichu Luo Shu started to check. "Young master, these are antidote pills of high quality." Before long, Hichu reported. At the same time, he used the yin-yang cauldron to analyze the ingredients of the antidote pills. Once they were analyzed, Muronyu could mass-produce them. "Old man, I will believe you this time." Since Hichu Luo Shu said that there was no problem, Muronyu was naturally not worried. He took out a pill and popped it into his mouth. At the same time, he retrieved the Hichu Luo Shu and transformed it into an inner armor. "Brat, are you here because of the Poison Dragon King?" After walking for a while, Divine Dr. Pei suddenly asked. "It's a mission from a sect, so he came over to take a look. You said that the toxic continent really has a toxic dragon king?" Muronyu nodded and explained his quest, then asked. Divine Dr. Pei looked at Muronyu as though he was looking at a monster. "Which sect are you from? There's actually such an idiotic mission?" "It's just the work of some despicable people," Muronyu said indifferently. If he did not accept this mission, the people from the Heaven Alliance and the Earth Alliance could not do anything to him. The reason he accepted this mission was actually because he wanted to make a trip to the toxic continent. The Poison Dragon King does exist. However, his lifespan should have been depleted. At this time, the toxic continent should be very lively. Divine Dr. Pei's eyes flickered as he thought of something. "Old man Pei, you're also here for the Poison Dragon King's Poison Dragon's heart?" Divine Dr. Pei looked at Muronyu with astonishment. "Brat, you know quite a lot. This old man is indeed here for the Poison Dragon's heart. Moreover, you're going the wrong way. Isn't this the most central location of the toxic continent? The Poison Dragon King should be there, right? Before that, I'll bring you to a place." As he spoke, Divine Dr. Pei suddenly stretched out his hand. Before Muronyu could react, he had already grabbed him. Then his body swayed, turned into a stream of light, and flew into the distance. Muronyu turned pale with fright. Just as he was about to berate Divine Dr. Pei, a lovable voice came from afar. "Old man Pei, you can't escape." Before the voice landed, Muronyu saw two streams of light, one red and one green, flying over from afar. Muronyu immediately understood. Weren't those two ladies who were chasing after Divine Dr. Pei? "Old man Pei, didn't you say that you've already shaken them off? Why are they still chasing after us?" Muronyu looked at Old Man Pei suspiciously as he asked. "These two ladies aren't simple." Old Man Pei's face flashed with an unnatural expression as he continued. "I'm going to increase my speed." Swish! Murongyu's vision blurred. Then he realized that the two ladies who were chasing after him had already been thrown off. The shock in Murongyu's heart couldn't be any greater. This speed was too fast. If Murongyu's speed was compared to a snail, then Divine Dr. Pei's speed was the fastest cheetah. Furthermore, his speed was more than 100 times more terrifying than a cheetah. "Old man Pei, you should be in the Heavenly Emperor realm, right?" After recovering from his shock, Muronyu asked again. Divine Dr. Pei didn't reply. He only smiled noncommittally. Even so, Muronyu was certain that Divine Dr. Pei was in the Heavenly Emperor realm. Looking at Murongyu's shocked expression, he calmed down after a while. Even though he knew that Muronyu was in the Heavenly Emperor realm, he was still so calm. He didn't have the restraint, nervousness, uneasiness, or even worship that ordinary people would have. Muronyu was very calm. It was as though Divine Dr. Pei wasn't a Heavenly Emperor, but someone who was in the same realm as him. This piqued Divine Dr. Pei's curiosity once again. "Lad, why are you still so calm when you know that I'm in the Heavenly Emperor realm? If it was an ordinary person, they would have long wanted to acknowledge you as their master. Because I believe that I will reach the Heavenly Emperor realm very soon, or even surpass it. Since that's the case, why should I be so agitated?" Muronyu said indifferently. His heart of an expert had never bowed down before. not to mention the heavenly emperor realm. Even if it was the primordial god realm, or even the highest realm in the divine world, he was confident that he could reach the heavenly venerate realm. He believed that one day he would reach this realm and stand proudly in the divine world, looking down on all the gods. Divine Dr. Pei's heart trembled violently. He was stunned by Murong Yu's confidence. With his strength and status, he had seen too many people. Among them, there was no lack of geniuses, peerless geniuses, and even monstrous existences. These people were like Murong Yu, full of confidence in their future. However, many of them eventually fell under the influence of time. Why was that? Because these people were arrogant and insufferably arrogant. However, Divine Dr. Pei didn't see any arrogance or insufferably arrogance in Murong Yu. All he saw was confidence. Confidence, not arrogance. At this moment, Divine Dr. Pei suddenly felt that Murong Yu might really reach the heavenly venerate realm one day and stand at the peak of the divine world, looking down on all the gods. Kid, I'm looking forward to seeing you reach the heavenly venerate realm. Divine Dr. Pei suddenly laughed. It won't take long. When that time comes, old man Pei, you can only look up to me. Murong Yu laughed, bursting with confidence. Divine Dr. Pei was speechless. With his status, there were only people in the divine world who could look up to him. There was absolutely no one who was worth looking up to. However, he didn't know that the young man in his hand was an existence he had to look up to. Of course, this was a story for the future. Let's not talk about it for now. Old man Pei, where are you bringing me? A fun place. Divine Dr. Pei chuckled. Coupled with his sloppy appearance, he looked a little wretched. This made Murong Yu curse in his heart. He was really suspicious of Divine Dr. Pei's identity. Kid, how much do you know about the toxic continent? I don't know anything, Murong Yu answered honestly. In the entire toxic continent, there are only two places that have real treasures. One is the center of the toxic continent where the Poison Dragon King resides. Just the Poison Dragon King alone is a priceless treasure, let alone the Poison Dragon King's lifetime collection. As for the other place, it's called the Heavenly Moat. Murong Yu was puzzled. Isn't it said that the toxic continent's poisonous gas is ferocious and even heavenly emperors can't go deep? If that's the case, there should be many historical remains in the depths of the toxic continent. Antidote pill. Moreover, it's not only heavenly emperors who go deep into the toxic continent. There are also immemorial gods and even holy venerables. After countless years, how many treasures can there be in the toxic continent? However, where are the 10 places in the heavenly moat? It's fine if it's the Poison Dragon King. No one dares to go near it. However, there are so many experts in the divine world in the heavenly moat. I'm afraid it's already been plundered clean, right? Divine Dr. Pei didn't answer immediately. Instead, he muttered to himself before continuing. The heavenly moat is an extremely special place. It's also the only place in the entire toxic continent that isn't affected by the poisonous gas. Once you enter the heavenly moat, even heavenly venerables have to obediently follow the rules of the heavenly moat. Even heavenly venerables are no different from ordinary gods. There's no difference. Murong Yu's interest was immediately piqued. Old man Pei, what exactly is that place? What exactly is there? It can even suppress heavenly venerables? Even heavenly venerables can't do anything about it? The heavenly moat opens once every 1,000,000 years. Each opening lasts for 10,000 years. There's nothing inside except for a cultivation technique. It's a cultivation technique that even heavenly venerables can't comprehend. It's a cultivation technique that even heavenly venerables covet. It's actually so powerful. Murong Yu's face flashed with a trace of astonishment. At the same time, a thought flashed through his mind. It was as though he was going to reap some benefits this time. Every time the heavenly moat opens, countless almighty experts from the divine world will enter. Even this old man enters once every time. However, Divine Dr. Pei laughed. His expression was slightly gloomy. No one has ever been able to comprehend that cultivation technique. Murong Yu blurted out. Yes, Otherwise, that cultivation technique would have disappeared long ago. What exactly is that cultivation technique? Even the almighty experts of the divine world can't comprehend it. Murongyu's curiosity was completely piqued. Immediately, he urged, "Old man Pei, speed up." Divine Dr. Pei was gloomy. Was he being treated as a coachman? However, he still flew at full speed towards the heavenly moat. Although the toxic continent was huge, Divine Dr. Pei's speed was extremely terrifying. Not long later, Murongyu and Divine Dr. Pei appeared at the periphery of a desert. As far as the eye could see, it was densely packed with human heads. Some of them were strong, some of them were weak. There were even some who had reached the true God realm. The toxic continent didn't have any suppressive powers. As long as one had enough antidote pills, even true gods could enter. Of course, these antidote pills weren't something that ordinary sects could afford. Those who could enter this place were definitely not simple people. Chapter 876. Swoosh. When Divine Dr. Pei and Murongyu descended from the sky, countless gazes from the crowd immediately swept across the sky and pierced towards them. Murongyu didn't sense any killing intent or enmity from these gazes. All they felt was admiration and respect. Divine Dr. Pei. Divine Dr. Pei is here? Greetings, Divine Dr. Pei. In an instant, countless people walked over to greet Divine Dr. Pei. Their expressions were filled with respect. Respect that came from the bottom of their hearts. In the world of gods, almost everyone was a god. They were powerful and had a long lifespan. They didn't suffer from old age or illness like in the mortal world. However, this didn't mean that a god's body was healthy. A god wouldn't fall sick. In fact, gods and mortals were the same. They could fall sick. Some illnesses could even turn a powerful god into a corpse. Moreover, other than illnesses, it was inevitable for gods to suffer from hidden illnesses during their cultivation. There were all sorts of problems that they couldn't solve themselves. At this time, they needed a professional divine doctor. Divine Dr. Pei was one of the most famous divine doctors in the world of gods. However, Divine Dr. Pei's seniority was extremely high. Ordinary people didn't know his identity and wouldn't recognize him. In fact, they hadn't even heard of him before. Just like Murongyu, Old Man Pei was indifferent to these people who came up to greet him. He glanced at most of them indifferently. He only nodded slightly in response to a few of them. Even so, the surrounding people didn't show any strange expressions. This was because they knew that Divine Dr. Pei's identity should be like this. On the contrary, if Divine Dr. Pei responded to them warmly, they would be frightened. Seeing this, Murongyu, who was beside Divine Dr. Pei, couldn't help but be shocked. This was because he saw that the people who came to greet him were extremely powerful. There wasn't even a Heavenly King Realm expert. Although the Heavenly King Realm experts wanted to greet him, they weren't qualified to do so. Of course, while Murongyu was observing the people who came to greet him, they were also observing Murongyu secretly. However, no matter how they thought, they couldn't figure out Murongyu's identity. However, Murongyu was brought over by Divine Dr. Pei. His relationship with Divine Dr. Pei was definitely not bad. Hence, after greeting Divine Dr. Pei, all of them nodded slightly at Murongyu. Regarding this, Murongyu also responded one by one in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. At the same time, he snickered inwardly. These fellows think that I'm related to Old Man Pei, so they're being so friendly to me. However, I wonder what kind of expression they would have if they knew that I was caught by Divine Dr. Pei on the streets. Old Man Pei, it seems like you're really a genius doctor. It seems like your prestige isn't low. After half a day, Murongyu smiled and said to Divine Dr. Pei. However, Murongyu's words caused the bodies of those who were secretly paying attention to Divine Dr. Pei to tremble slightly. For a moment, he was even more interested in Murongyu. Brat, do you think this old man would lie to you? Hearing Murongyu's words, Divine Dr. Pei's cold and indifferent expression instantly disappeared. Instead, it was replaced with a furious expression. How can there be a genius doctor like you who doesn't care about his image? Even now, I still have my doubts. Muronyu smiled faintly, his face full of doubt. Old Man Pei was about to die from anger. His beard was curling up as though he wanted to send Muronyu flying with a slap. However, he was extremely curious about Muronyu. Before he unraveled Muronyu's secret, he would definitely chase Muronyu away from his side. No, it should be said that Muronyu wouldn't chase him away. When they heard the conversation between Muronyu and Old Man Pei, the surrounding people couldn't help but look at each other. They were even more curious about Muronyu's identity. This was because they all knew Divine Dr. Pei's character. If he didn't take a liking to someone, he wouldn't even allow that person to get close to him, let alone talk to him. On the other hand, Muronyu was constantly doubting Old Man Pei's identity and mocking him. Even so, Old Man Pei didn't get angry. On the contrary, he seemed to be very concerned about Muronyu. This young man's relationship with Divine Dr. Pei isn't simple. We must get along well in the future. In an instant, the surrounding people made a decision. Old Man Pei, the heavenly moat should be in the middle of the desert, right? Why aren't we going in? Muronyu asked curiously. When they heard Muronyu calling Divine Dr. Murong Old Man Pei, the surrounding people were shocked as they looked at Muronyu strangely. At the same time, their desire to curry favor with Muronyu intensified. This was because in the divine world, no one dared to call Divine Dr. Pei Old Man Pei, other than those who had a good relationship with Old Man Pei and were on the same level as him. When the others saw him, which one of them didn't greet him respectfully and greet him as Divine Dr. Pei or Senior or something like that? It's not time yet. Old Man Pei placed his hands behind his back as he looked at the boundless desert. His eyes were filled with profoundness. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like an expert. If he wasn't dressed in such a sloppy manner, he could feel the curious and envious gazes sweeping across him. Muronyu looked at the desert in front of him calmly as he tried to figure out what the heavenly moat was. What was the cultivation technique in the heavenly moat? Muronyu didn't care about the gazes of the surrounding people. This was because he knew that all these were given to him by the sloppy Old Man Pei. If it wasn't for Old Man Pei who brought him here, why would these people even look at him? Even if they saw him, they would only look at him with contempt and disdain. In the divine world, other than having absolute strength, there was no one else. There were also those who depended on their father, master, and backing. If you don't have powerful strength, but if you have a powerful father, a powerful master, and a powerful backer, then you will definitely be very powerful. As a true god, he could sweep across all the continents in the divine world. But now, Muronyu didn't have any of these. Brat, do you enjoy this feeling? Old Man Pei suddenly asked. Muronyu turned to look at Old Man Pei before shaking his head. What was the point of having such vanity? Of course, if he relied on his strength to make these people jealous, then there was no need for him to enjoy it, because it was what he deserved. Kid, if you accept me as your master, you can do whatever you want in the divine world. What do you think? Old Man Pei looked at Muronyu and said with a smile. Plop. Before Muronyu could react, some of the people who heard Old Man Pei's words couldn't help but fall to the ground. Even those who were stronger than the Heavenly King realm couldn't help but feel their hearts twitching violently. One had to know that Divine Dr. Pei was strong and had superb medical skills. However, he didn't have any power or disciples. If one could become Divine Dr. Pei's disciple, it would be like what he said. He could sweep across all the continents in the divine world. In an instant, countless gazes gathered on Murongyu's body. As long as Muronyu nodded, he would become Divine Dr. Pei's disciple. He would have a supreme status in the divine world. Muronyu looked at Divine Dr. Pei. After a few breaths, he said slowly, not interested, plop. This time, a large number of people were stunned by Murongyu's words. Everyone fell to the ground. Even those experts who had surpassed the Heavenly King realm couldn't help but feel their hearts twitching violently. At this moment, many of them wanted to agree on behalf of Muronyu. However, there were even more people who looked at Muronyu as though they were looking at an idiot. They couldn't understand why Murongyu would reject divine Dr. Pei's offer. One had to know that in the divine world, even the disciples of the supreme forces couldn't wait to become divine Dr. Pei's disciple. However, no matter how prominent the other party's identity was or how talented they were, they couldn't enter divine Dr. Pei's eyes. Right now, divine Dr. Pei had taken the initiative to accept him as a disciple. However, this person rejected him without hesitation. Seeing that the surrounding people were puzzled, confused, and even gritting their teeth, Murongyu remained calm. He continued to ask why. Your talent is not bad, divine Dr. Pei said faintly. Murongyu immediately looked at old man Pei with disdain. What do you mean by my talent is not bad? I haven't even come into contact with medical skills. This old man has always been good at judging people. You've made a mistake this time. Hearing the conversation between the two of them, the surrounding people felt dizzy. At this moment, a few figures shot over from afar. Very quickly, they appeared near divine Dr. Pei. Murongyu, it's actually you, you little bastard. Those people had just landed when a familiar voice was heard from Murongyu. Murongyu was stunned as he turned around. Then he squinted his eyes slightly. Young master of the Divine Union, how did it feel to be killed by me in the immortal world? Wow. Before Murongyu could finish his words, the surrounding crowd was already filled with shock. All of them looked at Murongyu in disbelief. Who in the Divine World or the Eldritch Continent didn't know about the Divine Union? The Divine Union was a supreme force and a giant existence. However, Murongyu actually killed the young master of the Divine Union in the immortal world. The person who had arrived was Ji. At this moment, when he heard Murongyu's words and saw the surrounding people looking at him, he was instantly enraged. Boom! An incomparably frightening aura erupted from his body. His entire body was brimming with killing intent as he walked step by step towards Murongyu. Little bastard, I told you that you will die after you ascend to the divine world. Ji's voice was cold and filled with killing intent. Murongyu's eyes narrowed as he realized that Ji's strength had already reached the Heavenly King stage. However, he couldn't tell which stage he was at. Chapter 877. Ji couldn't help but sneer when he saw Murongyu's fleeting expression. He thought that Murongyu was afraid. Little bastard, are you afraid? Kneel down right now, and I'll let you die a quick death. Murongyu had once destroyed his physical body in the immortal realm. He wasn't just a mortal enemy to Ji, but also a great humiliation. Ever since his physical body had been destroyed by Murongyu in the immortal realm, he had always wanted to kill Murongyu. That was why he had sent people from the Divine Union to kill Murongyu in the primordial continent. Although he wasn't satisfied with the two people's false reports, he would settle the score with them when he returned to the Divine Union. However, now that he had seen Murongyu, he naturally wanted to kill him. This guy's strength is actually at the Heavenly King stage. Even if I release the Dragon Beast corpse, I won't be able to kill him. I won't even be able to kill him, Murongyu muttered to himself. However, his expression remained calm. Junior brother, wait a moment. Ji hadn't come alone. A few powerhouses from the Divine Union had come with him, including one of his senior brothers. The moment Ji came out, he rushed toward Murongyu with a murderous aura. This made the people from the Divine Union feel very strange. They didn't know that Ji had an enemy called Murongyu. Generally speaking, someone who could make Ji so angry would have been killed by Ji a long time ago. After all, even if Ji didn't have that kind of strength, the Divine Union did. Therefore, they all looked at Murongyu curiously. They wanted to see who this person was that made the young master of the Divine Union so angry. However, they were soon disappointed. He was just an ant at the true celestial stage. However, when they heard Murongyu speak, they knew who Murongyu was. Although they were surprised that Murongyu's strength had improved so quickly, they only glanced at him in disdain. True God realm, Ji could blow him to death with a single breath. However, right at this moment, Ji's senior brother, Zhao Li Feng, inadvertently glanced at the sloppy old man beside Murongyu. At first, he thought that old man Pei was just an ordinary old man, so he didn't pay much attention to him. However, in the next moment, his heart twitched violently. He looked at old man Pei again. In an instant, his body shook violently. He immediately roared, and at the same time, his figure flashed, and in a flash, he blocked in front of Ji. "Senior brother Zhao, what are you doing? Could it be that you want to save that little bastard?" Ji looked at Zhao Lifeng with a gloomy face. He was very unhappy. "Junior brother, I'm afraid that this brat has a close relationship with Divine Dr. Pei. You must not be reckless." Zhao Lifeng transmitted a message to Ji Yi. "I don't care if he's Divine Dr. Pei or a far Divine Doctor. Today, no one can stop me from killing that little bastard." Zhao Lifeng transmitted his voice to GMO. However, the enraged Ji didn't send a voice transmission. Instead, he roared. Just as Ji Yunshu finished speaking, whoosh. Everyone who heard it, actually, everyone present heard it. Immediately, everyone's gaze landed on Ji Yunshu's face at the same time, regardless of what they had been doing previously. Their faces were filled with surprise, shock, ridicule, and even disdain. Where did this brat come from? How could he be so disdainful of Divine Dr. Pei? Everyone had the same thought. Some of the more powerful people started to frown. They were all wondering if they should teach this arrogant young master of the Divine Union a lesson in order to gain Divine Dr. Pei's favor. Whoosh! They were different from those who were watching a good show. After hearing Ji Yunshu's words, Zhao Lifeng's face turned ugly. The Divine Union was strong, but they wouldn't dare treat Divine Dr. Pei so rudely. Even the Divine Union's Union Master had to be polite to Divine Dr. Pei. What more the young Master of the Divine Union? In front of others, the young Master of the Divine Union was high and mighty. However, in the eyes of Divine Dr. Pei, he was nothing. Even if Divine Dr. Pei killed the young Master of the Divine Union, the Divine Union Master wouldn't dare do anything to Divine Dr. Pei. Zhao Lifeng immediately turned around and walked over to Divine Dr. Pei, who had a gloomy expression on his face. "My junior brother is young and ignorant. Please forgive him, Divine Dr. Pei," he said fearfully. "Senior brother, are you crazy? He's just an old man. Is he worthy of such respect?" Seeing the powerful Zhao Lifeng being so respectful to a sloppy old man with an ordinary appearance, Ji was immediately displeased. At the same time, he took a step forward and glared coldly at Morongyu. "Little bastard, even if the Heavenly Emperor comes today, he won't be able to save you." With a sinister smile, Ji Yunshu extended his hand and slapped Morongyu's head. Given Morongyu's strength, he wouldn't be able to withstand the might of his palm. Morongyu didn't move. His expression was still calm. Ji Yunshu sneered in his heart. He thought that Morongyu was just relying on the old man. However, in Ji Yunshu's heart, no matter who Morongyu was relying on, he would definitely die today. However, at that moment, a large hand appeared out of nowhere and grabbed his hand like an iron clamp. Ji Yunshu was instantly enraged. He glared at the person with murderous intent, wanting to see who had the audacity to stop him. A moment later, a look of shock and disbelief appeared on Ji Yunshu's face. "Senior brother Zhao, why are you stopping me?" Ji Yunshu was thoroughly enraged. He couldn't understand why Zhao Lifeng had repeatedly stopped him. Zhao Lifeng was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. If Ji Yunshu wasn't the young master of the Divine Union, he would have slapped this bastard to death. "Divine Dr. Pei is here. You can't give up. I don't care who he is." Ji Yunshu glared at Zhao Lifeng with a murderous look in his eyes. However, before he could finish his sentence, he stopped, and a look of horror appeared on his face. "Senior brother, are you saying that he is Divine Dr. Pei?" Ji Yunshu swallowed a mouthful of saliva, his eyes filled with fear. He finally heard it clearly. "Why aren't you apologizing to Divine Dr. Pei?" Zhao Lifeng glared at Ji Yunshu furiously. Although he couldn't wait to kill him, he still retracted his hand and berated him. Ji Yunshu looked at Divine Dr. Pei fearfully before walking forward cautiously. He bowed respectfully before Divine Dr. Pei and said, "I have offended you. Please don't be angry, Divine Dr. Pei." A disdainful smile appeared on Murong Yu's face when he saw the previously arrogant Ji Yunshu apologizing to Divine Physician Pei like a dog with its tail between its legs. At the same time, Murong Yu was also shocked by Divine Dr. Pei's identity and status. TSK. Divine Dr. Pei didn't even look at Ji Yunshu and the others. He only snorted coldly. PFFF. At this moment, Ji Yunshu, Zhao Li Feng, and even the person from the Divine Union spat out mouthfuls of blood. Their faces were pale, and their breathing was unstable. Ji, who had been incomparably arrogant before, was so frightened that his face turned pale with a plop, and he sat down on the ground. Please forgive us, Divine Dr. Pei. I will teach Junior Brother Ji a lesson when we return. Zhao Li Feng held back the shock in his heart, pulled up Ji Hao, who was inexplicably shocked, and left with his tail between his legs. However, before they left, Ji Yunshu glared viciously at Murong Yu. He blamed everything on Murong Yu. His murderous intent towards Murong Yu intensified, and he hated Murong Yu even more. However, he wouldn't dare lay a hand on Murong Yu even if he had the guts to do so. Old Man Pei, you are so impressive, Murong Yu said as he glanced at Ji Yunshu, his eyes filled with killing intent. However, he didn't say anything harsh. After all, he didn't have the right to say anything harsh. Furthermore, Ji Yunshu had already been sentenced to death by him. It was only a matter of time before he was executed. On the contrary, he looked at Old Man Pei curiously as he spoke. It wasn't clear whether he was praising or flattering him. Ji Yunshu and Zhao Li Feng staggered and almost fell to the ground when they heard Murong Yu's words. Then, they left even faster. Since Murong Yu dared to address Divine Dr. Pei as Old Man Pei, and Divine Dr. Pei wasn't angry, it was enough to prove that their relationship wasn't shallow. Since when did this little bastard get involved with Divine Dr. Pei? However, that's not important. Old Man Pei can't always be by his side. Once he is alone, he will die. Ji Yunshu gritted his teeth as he thought to himself, his murderous intent surging. The Divine Union is nothing. Kid, if you agree to be my disciple, I will eradicate the Divine Union immediately. I will kill every single one of them, Old Man Pei said disdainfully. Upon hearing Divine Dr. Pei's words, the surrounding people trembled violently. While Ji Yunshu and the rest were shocked, they were also shocked by Murong Yu. Murong Yu is actually worth Divine Dr. Pei eliminating the Divine Union personally? At that moment, Ji Yunshu was enveloped by a terrifying aura of death. He was afraid that Murong Yu would really become Divine Dr. Pei's disciple, and that Divine Dr. Pei would destroy the Divine Union directly. Did Divine Dr. Pei have the ability to destroy the Divine Union? As long as Divine Dr. Pei revealed this thought, he wouldn't even need to do anything. Countless people would be willing to help him destroy the Divine Union. As Ji Yunshu waited in fear, Murong Yu finally replied, I'm not interested. Ji Yunshu and the rest felt their hearts twitch violently. As for the rest, they already knew the outcome. You will be interested one day, Divine Dr. Pei said faintly. I will never be interested in becoming your disciple, Murong Yu retorted. He wasn't interested in medical skills at all. Furthermore, he had the power of life and was omnipotent. He might even be more terrifying than Divine Dr. Pei. There are no absolutes in this world, Old Man Pei said before an unnatural expression appeared on his face. Kid, I'll take my leave first. Before he could finish his sentence, Old Man Pei had already disappeared from Murong Yu's line of sight. Murong Yu was stunned. Just as he was wondering what had happened, he saw two figures, one red and one green, flying over from afar. Instantly, he understood what had happened. Chapter 878. This was because Old Man Pei's skills were better, and he had left first. The pair of beautiful sisters did not even realize that Old Man Pei had been there. At this moment, the two of them had landed not far from Murong Yu. Like everyone else, Murong Yu was also sizing up the pair of beautiful sisters. Both of them had beautiful faces, and there was some resemblance between the two of them. Both of them had good figures and were stunning beauties. If this had been a normal occasion, or if it had not been for the special status of these two ladies, many people would have gone up to them to strike up a conversation. However, perhaps their background was really not simple. At this moment, everyone was looking at them from afar, and no one dared to go up to them. As for Murong-yu, he was even less interested in these beauties. Subsequently, Murong-yu found out about the sisters' identities from the discussions around him. They seemed to be from a family called the Ouyang family. The Ouyang family was also a family in the Eldritch mainland. They were like giants and were much more powerful than the Divine Union. Even the arrogant young master of the Divine Union did not dare to strike up a conversation with the sisters after seeing them. "Lad, do you like these two ladies?" At this moment, a voice sounded in Murong-yu's ears. Then, a middle-aged man appeared beside Murong-yu out of thin air and looked at Murong-yu with a smile. Murong-yu was shocked and turned to look at him. Then he smiled and said, "Old man Pei, why are you pretending to be like this? I think my previous appearance suits you." The middle-aged man, who was Divine Dr. Pei, jumped in fright. In the realm of the gods, other than his superb medical skills, he was also good at disguising. In the realm of the gods, anyone could change their appearance as they wished. However, even if they changed their appearance, their aura would not change. Therefore, if someone was familiar with him or had seen his aura before, they would be able to recognize him. No matter what he changed into, he would be recognized at a glance. Therefore, in the realm of the gods, no one would change their appearance. However, Divine Dr. Pei's disguising skills were amazing and could even change one's aura. Just like now, no one would be able to recognize that he was Divine Dr. Pei if he dared to soar. However, Murong-yu recognized him with just a glance? Was that even possible? "Brat, what did you say?" Divine Dr. Pei didn't admit it immediately. "You can hide it from others, but no one can hide it from me. As long as I see you, no matter what you look like, I will be able to recognize you." Murong-yu said lightly. A person's physical body could change, but their soul could not. Even if he could change his aura, he couldn't change his soul. And after Murong-yu condensed the spatial godhead, he could see the aura left behind by everyone in the space. This aura was the aura of the soul. This was something that no one could change. "Kid, how did you know?" Old man Pei was shocked beyond words. At the same time, his interest in Murong-yu grew. "Maybe it's my talent." Murong-yu smiled faintly, not wanting to explain too much. Old man Pei sized up Murong-yu deeply and didn't continue asking. "Old man Pei, what's your relationship with the Ouyang clan? I heard them talking about how powerful the Ouyang clan is." After a moment of silence, Murong-yu couldn't help but ask. "The Ouyang clan is also a superpower in the great wilderness continent. However, no matter how powerful they are, they still have to beg me." Divine Dr. Pei chuckled, as though he felt that he was more powerful than any superpower. Divine Dr. Pei was indeed powerful. He was so powerful that he was chased by the Ouyang sisters. More and more experts arrived one after another. More and more experts gathered outside the desert. At this moment, Murong-yu, who was talking nonsense with Old Man Pei, suddenly felt a wave of killing intent. Turning his head, he saw Xianyu from Xianxing City walking over with a murderous look. A cold glint flashed across Murong-yu's eyes. He had already made up his mind. If Xianyu dared to make a move, he would definitely kill her. "Brat, where's the other person?" Xianyu didn't make a move immediately. Instead, she walked in front of Murong-yu with an arrogant look and disdain in her eyes. She looked at Murong-yu with disdain. She was asking about Fantong. Murong-yu didn't even bother to look at her, completely ignoring her presence. "Brat, Xianyu is asking you a question. How dare you not answer? You're courting death." A young man, who was probably Xianyu's gigolo, flew into a rage when he saw Murong-yu's reaction. He stretched out his hand and slapped Murong-yu's face. Seeing the murderous Xianyu and the young man who was only in the initial stage of the Sky Monarch realm, daring to make a move on Murong-yu. Those who knew about the relationship between Murong-yu and Divine Dr. Pei looked at them with ridicule in their eyes. Xianxing, the city lord of Xianxing City, was at the peak of the heavenly king realm. At this moment, when he saw the ridicule in the eyes of the crowd, his heart sank a little. However, after taking a glance at Murong Yu and divine Dr. Pei, who had turned into a middle-aged man, he retracted his moonlight. In this place where experts were as common as clouds, even if he was at the peak of the heavenly king realm, he had to tuck his tail between his legs and not offend anyone. However, he didn't think that he couldn't afford to offend a true god and a sky monarch. Old man Pei was a little disgusted. Not only did he transform into a middle-aged man, but he also suppressed his cultivation to the sky monarch realm. Scram, otherwise you'll die. Seeing that the young man had made a move, Murong Yu's eyes flashed with killing intent as he shouted coldly. The young man's eyes flashed with killing intent as he sneered. He took a step forward and slapped at an even faster speed. On the other hand, Xinyu only looked at Murong Yu with a cold smile. You're courting death. The one who spoke wasn't Murong Yu, but someone who was watching the show. In their eyes, these people were courting death for daring to make a move on someone who was close to divine Dr. Pei. That brat is divine Dr. Pei's disciple. How dare they make a move on him? TSK, TSK, they must be tired of living. They're just courting death. I think that even if that young man didn't retaliate, there must be someone else who stepped in to stop them. Hee hee, someone sneered. In fact, when Xinyu and the rest were closing in on Murong Yu, there were already many people who were looking over. This included those experts who had surpassed the heavenly king realm. After the previous incident, they knew that divine Dr. Pei thought highly of Murong Yu and even wanted to accept Murong Yu as his disciple. Even though divine Dr. Pei wasn't here, if they watched Murong Yu get killed or suppressed without doing anything, divine Dr. Pei would definitely be unhappy. In fact, some of them even felt that this was a great opportunity to express their goodwill to divine Dr. Pei. However, before these people could make a move, the Ouyang sisters had already arrived in front of Murong Yu. Scram! The red-robed Ouyang Tong swept a glance at Xinyu and the young man before snorting coldly. PFFF! The young man who attacked spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Even Xinyu's face turned pale when she saw Ouyang Tong's glare. The blood in her body was boiling, and she was extremely shocked. Immediately, they knew that they couldn't afford to offend this pair of sisters. Hence, they glared hatefully at Murong Yu before retreating unwillingly. Murong Yu, right? You know divine Dr. Pei? Were you with divine Dr. Pei previously? After Xinyu left, Ouyang Tong looked at Murong Yu and asked with a smile. Looking at Xinyu, a look of pity flashed across Murong Yu's eyes. If the Ouyang sisters hadn't acted too early, Murong Yu would have already killed Xinyu. But now, he didn't have the chance. Before Murong Yu could say anything, old man Pei, who was standing beside him, had an unnatural look on his face. Old man, Pei has already left. Murong Yu glanced at the Ouyang sisters. His gaze didn't linger on their beautiful faces as he spoke indifferently. B****. Ouyang Tong immediately gritted her teeth. Murong Yu, I heard from them that divine Dr. Pei wanted to accept you as his disciple, but you rejected him? The sister in green, who was Ouyang Yin, sized Murong Yu up and asked indifferently. Her voice was like a yellow oriole and as gentle as water. Murong Yu immediately identified her. The one who had been clamoring that old man Pei wouldn't be able to escape should be Ouyang Tong. Ouyang Tong's personality should be straightforward and fiery. On the other hand, Ouyang Yin should be a relatively gentle lady. I'm not interested in medicine. Murong Yu replied honestly. From what I know, countless people in the divine world are begging to be that old man's disciple. However, it's impossible. You actually rejected him? Ouyang Tong sized up Murong Yu as though she wanted to see what kind of person Murong Yu was. I don't trust old man Pei's medical skills. After hearing Murong Yu's words, old man Pei, who had transformed into a middle-aged man, stumbled and almost fell to the ground. However, the surrounding people didn't find it strange at all. Big sister, this kid is quite interesting. Moreover, I think old man Pei is quite interested in him. That damned old man is always elusive. Let's just stay by this kid's side. Ouyang Tong's beautiful eyes flickered as she spoke to Ouyang Yin. All right. Ouyang Yin nodded. Morongyu rolled his eyes. Although there were two powerful bodyguards by his side, including Old Man Pei, there should be 3 of them. However, Morongyu would rather not have them. After all, with the 3 of them by his side, he wouldn't dare to use any of his methods or treasures. In that case, he might not be able to obtain anything. Old Man Pei, you've got me into trouble. Morongyu transmitted a message to Old Man Pei. Why don't I expose you? With the 3 of us protecting you, kid, you should be happy. Divine Dr. Pei chuckled. However, why did he feel that Old Man Pei was up to no good? Chapter 879. Everyone looked at Morongyu enviously. They were envious that Morongyu had the protection of the Ouyang sisters. In reality, Morongyu was extremely depressed. A few days later, the natural moat was finally opened. As the natural moat opened, everyone rushed in like a swarm of bees. Morongyu, Old Man Pei, and the Ouyang sisters also walked in. The reason they walked in was because after entering the desert, it was impossible to fly due to certain rules. Furthermore, everyone's strength was suppressed. Morongyu twisted his body uncomfortably. Ever since he entered the desert, his strength had been completely suppressed. It wasn't just him. Everyone who entered the desert was the same. In other words, after entering the desert, there were no more heavenly emperors or beings of higher cultivation realms. They had all become like mortals and were only left with the strength of their physical bodies. Morongyu glanced around slowly and sneered in his heart. If the young master of the Divine Union still dared to come over and complain, he would definitely beat him up. Without the suppression of cultivation realms, Morongyu's physical body was stronger than most of the people here. In terms of physical strength, Morongyu was ranked at the top among these people. Why is this place called the Natural Moat? Morongyu turned his head and asked Old Man Pei, who had transformed into a middle-aged man. You will know in a while. Old Man Pei didn't answer his question. Morongyu rolled his eyes and didn't continue asking. Although everyone had lost their strength, they weren't slow either. They flew all the way and soon arrived at the center of the desert. From afar, a huge chasm appeared in front of everyone, dividing the desert into north and south. The chasm was so deep that they couldn't see the bottom. At a glance, it was pitch black. This was because the chasm was really too deep. The chasm wasn't very wide. It was about 100 million miles wide. This width wasn't a problem for gods, immortals, or even cultivators. This was because they could easily fly over it. But now, in this desert, they were like mortals without the ability to fly. If he couldn't fly, how could he fly over? Morongyu finally understood why this place was called the Heavenly Moat. It was just like this huge chasm. To others, a chasm of a few hundred miles was already considered a natural moat, let alone this place that was 100 million miles wide. Looking at the bottomless chasm, Morongyu frowned slightly. Are we going over or going down? In fact, Morongyu faced the same problem. If he wanted to go over, he had to go down and cross the chasm to reach the other side. How to get down was also a problem. After all, even with Morongyu's current physical strength, if he forced himself down, he would probably be smashed to pieces. He was deader than dead. Most importantly, even if they had magical treasures, they wouldn't be able to use their divine weapons. Even if he used it, he wouldn't have the power to maintain it. That cultivation technique is in the chasm. We have to go down, Old Man Pei said. How do we go down? Do we just jump down like this? Morongyu frowned. You can jump down. Ouyang Tong glanced at Morongyu and smiled faintly. If you jump down, I will definitely jump down too. Morongyu looked at Ouyang Tong without showing any signs of weakness. Ouyang Tong fell silent. Although she was powerful, her physical body wasn't that strong. If she jumped down, she would definitely die. Wait, Old Man Pei only said one sentence before he fell silent. In the end, he sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes to regulate his breathing. At the same time, Muronyu realized that many people gathered around the chasm were either sitting down cross-legged or gathered together to discuss. No one was in a hurry to go down. It seemed like this wasn't the first time these people were here. Seeing that Old Man Pei and the Ouyang sisters were sitting cross-legged on the ground, Muronyu rolled his eyes and didn't bother to ask any more questions. He just stared at the bottomless chasm in a daze. After a few days, Muronyu suddenly realized that huge rocks of different sizes were flying up from the bottom of the chasm. These huge rocks seemed to be controlled by someone. After they flew up from the bottom of the chasm, they slowly approached the shore where Muronyu was. "Go up!" Ouyang Tong shouted in a low voice and leaped up. Muronyu also jumped onto the huge rock without any hesitation. When Muronyu and the other three gathered on the huge rock, it seemed to sense something and slowly floated down to the bottom of the chasm. Could it be that someone is controlling this place? Murongyu's eyes shone brightly. He was puzzled. Who has the ability to control this place? Old Man Pei sneered. Even a heavenly venerate expert would be like an ordinary person in this place. Murongyu's frown deepened. Actually, the entire God realm wants to know if someone is controlling this place. However, there really isn't anyone in the God realm who can control this place, Ouyang Yin said. Muronyu nodded. He didn't dwell on this matter any longer. In this world, there were too many dangerous places and secret realms like this. Which one of them could be controlled? Whoosh whoosh. At first, the huge rock was moving very quickly. However, it moved faster and faster. In the end, its speed was comparable to Old Man Pei's. Before long, the huge rock carried Muronyu and the others to the bottom of the chasm. After jumping down from the boulder flew up with a swish sound. It must have gone to pick up the others. Muronyu raised his head and looked up. However, he only saw the sky high above and the huge rocks shooting down. This chasm was very deep. It was more than 10 billion kilometers long. At such a high speed, if someone jumped down directly, even a god would be smashed into a pile of mush. "Let's go," Old Man Pei said. Then, he unfolded his body and flew forward. Even if they didn't have any strength left, their running speed was still much faster than an immortal's flying speed. Along the way, Muronyu saw other people running with all their might. After all, the chasm only opened once every million years. Moreover, it only opened once every 10,000 years. Although they hadn't been able to comprehend that cultivation technique all this time, but who knew if he would suddenly be enlightened? Thus, time was precious. Old Man Pei, you said that this is only a cultivation technique. Even after countless years, no one has been able to comprehend it. However, with the memories of a god, it shouldn't be difficult to remember that cultivation technique, right? Why do we have to risk our lives to enter this place every time? Muronyu turned his head and said to Old Man Pei. Of course, he didn't say the words Old Man Pei out loud. He only transmitted his voice. Something's not right. After we entered the desert, there seemed to be no more poisonous gas. Because of Old Man Pei's antidote pill, the poisonous gas of the toxic continent didn't affect Muronyu at all. Thus, Muronyu actually neglected the fact that they were in the toxic continent. However, he suddenly realized that there was no poisonous gas here. There is no poisonous gas in the heavenly chasm. As for that cultivation technique, there aren't many words in it. It's only about 10,000 words. However, if we are unable to comprehend it, the moment we step half a step out of the heavenly chasm, that cultivation technique will disappear from our memories. It's as if it was erased by an almighty. The person who answered Muronyu wasn't Old Man Pei. Instead, it was the quiet Ouyang Yin. It's that mysterious? Muronyu revealed a look of surprise. It's precisely because of this that every time the heavenly chasm opens, countless almighty beings from the God realm will rush over. It's a pity that after countless years, no one has been able to comprehend that cultivation technique. Perhaps someone has comprehended it. However, they didn't publicize it. Muronyu smiled faintly. He didn't think that no one would be able to comprehend it. After all, as long as it was a cultivation technique, there would always be someone who would comprehend it. Unless that wasn't a cultivation technique. Perhaps. Ouyang Yin sighed and didn't say anything else. She had been here a few times, but she hadn't gained anything. While running, Murong Yu's expression changed slightly. Just now, he felt that a few of his cultivation techniques had started to circulate on their own. It was as if they were being pulled by something. Army word formula. Battle word formula. Zai word formula. After entering the heavenly chasm, all his cultivation techniques were suppressed. Of course, the chaotic celestial record was the only exception. However, at this moment, the Bing formula, Do formula, and Zai formula actually trembled at the same time and circulated on their own. With a whoosh, Murong Yu suddenly increased his speed and swept past Old Man Pei and the Ouyang sisters. Old Man Pei and the sisters jumped in fright. Before this, Murong Yu's speed was already his limit. Because the three of them were accommodating to Murong Yu, they were able to maintain the same speed as Murong Yu. Murong Yu, on the other hand, jumped in fright. The Bing formula had always been good at speed. It was as fast as a dart. Now that it suddenly circulated, Murong Yu's speed suddenly increased by several times. Murong Yu even vaguely felt that his phantom luminous wings were about to be stretched open. At the same time, Murong Yu's Zai formula and Do formula also circulated. The three cultivation techniques seemed to have been pulled together and circulated rapidly. Murong Yu felt as if he was about to break through. Murong Yu was both surprised and delighted. He was surprised because he didn't know why the three cultivation techniques had suddenly circulated on their own. Moreover, all their strength had been suppressed. He was delighted because he felt that the three cultivation techniques were about to break through. Moreover, he had a crazy idea. Murong Yu thought to himself, the three cultivation techniques are actually being guided to circulate on their own. Could the cultivation technique in the heavenly moat be the other character formula of the 9 syllables? He couldn't help but reveal an expression of ecstasy. Chapter 880. Although there were only 9 words in the Buddhist incantation of 9 syllables, each word represented a cultivation technique. Moreover, the effect of each word was different. For example, the army word represented speed. The fighting word could increase one's fighting power. The Zai word represented the rules of space. Rules, not laws. Rules were above laws. Ever since he obtained the army word in the cultivation world, Murong Yu had obtained 3 words in the Buddhist incantation of 9 syllables. Compared to ordinary people, even 1 word would be enough to satisfy them. After all, if they cultivated the cultivation technique to the extreme, they would have extremely powerful achievements. However, Murong Yu wasn't satisfied with just 3 words. It would be best if he could obtain all of the Buddhist incantation of 9 syllables. Of course, he wouldn't force it. But now, after entering the chasm, the 3 words that Murong Yu had obtained before resonated with him. This made Murong Yu surprised. He faintly felt that the cultivation technique in the chasm might be one of the other words in the Buddhist incantation of 9 syllables. Suppressing the rapid circulation of the other 3 words, Murong Yu stopped in his tracks. "What's wrong with you?" At this moment, Old Man Pei and the other 2 walked over. They looked at Murong Yu in surprise. "Have you broken through to the next realm?" Ouyang Yin first asked and then asked the second question. But soon, she felt a little depressed. This was because she saw that Murong Yu's cultivation realm was still the same as before. He was in the intermediate true God realm and didn't break through. Just now, one of the cultivation techniques that I cultivated suddenly circulated. Therefore, the speed was slightly faster, Murong Yu said with a smile. Hearing this, Old Man Pei and the other 2 looked at Murong Yu in surprise. Of course, they knew what Murong Yu meant. With their abilities, although their powers were suppressed, they could still circulate their cultivation techniques. However, they couldn't use their powers. Obviously, Murong Yu was able to use his power just now. Although Old Man Pei and the other 2 were curious about the cultivation technique Murong Yu had mentioned, they were actually able to use its power in a place like this. However, they didn't ask any questions. After all, everyone's cultivation method was their own secret. All right, since that's the case, let's speed up. Ouyang Tong gave Murong Yu a deep look. Then, with a flash of her body, she flew forward. Murong Yu nodded and activated the army formula. His body turned into a stream of light and flew forward. His speed was the same as usual. After feeling that his speed had returned to normal, Murong Yu could not help but let out a long howl. At this moment, he had the urge to use his phantom light wings to see if he could fly here. However, on second thought, he gave up on this crazy idea. The phantom light wings required power to condense, and it also required power to maintain flight. Murong Yu was unable to use his power. However, Murong Yu felt that if he wanted to condense the phantom light wings, he should be able to do so. However, even if he could, Murong Yu did not intend to do so. After all, there were too many people here, and it wouldn't be good if he was exposed. However, when they saw that a true god speed was even faster than those sky monarchs and heavenly kings, the surrounding people were still in a daze. However, on second thought, even divine Dr. Pei wanted to take him in as a disciple. If he wasn't outstanding, why would divine Dr. Pei want to take him in as a disciple? Could it be that this brat can use his power? Old Man Pei and the other two who were following Murong Yu looked at Murong Yu in shock. With their strength, even if they didn't use their power, their speed was still extremely fast. It wasn't something that Murong Yu could be compared to. At this moment, as they got closer to the cultivation technique, Murong Yu felt that the army formula was circulating faster and faster. "It's in front," divine Dr. Pei suddenly said. Murong Yu looked over. He saw a huge, smooth, mirror-like boulder floating in the void thousands of miles in front of them. The boulder was huge and squarish. Its length and width were estimated to be thousands of miles long. From afar, the boulder looked like a mirror floating in the void, motionless. At this moment, there were countless people sitting cross-legged below the boulder. They looked up at the boulder and started comprehending. All of them were extremely quiet. Everyone knew that time was precious. Even if they were enemies, they wouldn't dare to be impudent here. This was because if they caused too much of a commotion, it would affect others. Once the public was angered, they would be killed by everyone. Boom! When Murong Yu's gaze landed on the boulder in the void, the boulder seemed to emit a divine light that shot up to the sky. Instantly, over 10,000 words that Murong Yu didn't recognize started to move like tadpoles. They automatically combined and transformed. Then, a cultivation technique gradually appeared in Murong Yu's line of sight. At the same time, the army, Do, and Zai words in Murong Yu's body started circulating crazily. When Murong Yu saw the cultivation technique on the boulder, he couldn't help but get excited even though he had already guessed it. He was so excited that his body couldn't help but tremble. The 9 syllables of mantra. Formation word formula. It was indeed one of the 9 syllables of mantra. Murong Yu recognized these words at a glance. Of course, in the eyes of others, the words on the boulder were still words that they couldn't recognize. There were no changes. Murong Yu's strange behavior was immediately noticed by Old Man Pei and the Ouyang sisters. Immediately, they all looked at Murong Yu with strange gazes. Along the way, Murong Yu acted strangely at every turn. He suddenly sped up, and his speed was much faster than some heavenly king realm experts. At this moment, the aura on his body kept flickering and his body kept trembling. If they weren't strong enough to see that there was nothing wrong with Murong Yu's body, they would definitely suspect that there was something wrong with Murong Yu's body. That boulder is glowing. Suddenly, countless people saw that the boulder floating in the void started to glow. At first, the boulder's glow was very weak. It was almost invisible, but the glow became brighter and more dazzling. In the end, it became as glaring as the sun. The glow was blinding and dazzling. A word flew out. After the huge rock emitted a resplendent light, everyone was shocked to see a character suddenly break free from the huge rock and fly out. It flew towards the ground at a high speed. What's going on? Everyone was shocked and didn't know what had happened. The boulder glowed, and a word flew out of the boulder. They had never even heard of such a situation, let alone seen it. The word that left the boulder was extremely fast. Soon, it shot into the sky above the crowd and continued to shoot into the distance. At this moment, the second word left the boulder and shot out along the trajectory of the first word. This cultivation method can make countless people unable to comprehend it. It must be very heaven-defying. Even if it's just one of the words, I'm afraid it contains terrifying energy. Many people looked at the word that shot out, their eyes shining. Suddenly, someone made a move. He used the force to soar into the air and stretched out his hand, grabbing the first word that left the boulder. However, that word was an invisible and intangible existence. How could he grab it? If they could use their power here, it would be possible to seal that word. However, they couldn't use any power here. After the first person made a move, the second person also made a move, and even more people made a move. However, without exception, these people couldn't come into contact with that word. At this moment, countless people in the periphery were excited. That was because they all saw the direction that the word was shooting in. It was right where they were. They all thought that the word was heading towards them. Many people had the same thought, but many of them were disappointed. That was because the word flew past the void above their heads without stopping. Old Man Pei and the Ouyang sisters' hearts tightened. This was because they all saw that the word was shooting towards them. Could it be because of this kid? At first, the three of them didn't think that the word was heading towards them. Instead, they instinctively thought that the word was heading towards Murongyu. They didn't know why, but they had that feeling. At this moment, Murongyu, who was trembling with excitement, calmed down. In his eyes, the word that people couldn't understand was getting closer and closer in his line of sight. That word was 9. It was the first word in the cultivation method on the boulder. The word 9 in the 9 syllables mantra. At the same time, Murongyu was certain that the word was heading towards him. Just as Murongyu thought, the word 9 turned into a ray of light and entered the space between Murongyu's eyebrows. Then it disappeared. That word actually entered that kid's body? What's going on? Many people were shocked when they saw this. However, there were even more people who had greedy looks in their eyes. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After the first word entered the space between Murongyu's eyebrows, more words quickly left the boulder and turned into rays of light that entered the space between Murongyu's eyebrows. Before anyone could react, more than 10,000 words on the boulder had left the boulder and entered the space between Murongyu's eyebrows. After receiving all the words, Murongyu didn't dare to ignore the envious, jealous, hateful, shocked, greedy, covetous, and murderous gazes around him. He sat down cross-legged. Boom! At the same time, a loud bang resounded from the huge rock in the sky, and then it exploded into powder and vanished into the heavens and the earth. Chapter 881. The huge rock that had been floating in the air for hundreds of millions of eras suddenly exploded and turned into dust in front of everyone's eyes. In an instant, everyone was stunned. What's going on? Everyone looked at the empty space in shock and confusion. The cultivation technique left the huge rock automatically. The cultivation technique no longer exists. It must have been obtained by that brat. After recovering from their shock, everyone looked at Murongyu, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground and cultivating. This brat obtained the cultivation technique. If we can take him down and force him to hand over the cultivation technique. In an instant, countless people rushed towards Murongyu. This cultivation technique had existed for countless years. Every million years, countless people would come to comprehend it. However, no one had gained anything from it. But now, it had been obtained by Murongyu. Moreover, it had been shattered by the huge rock. It had stopped them from continuing to comprehend it. In principle, this should be the reason why the cultivation technique had chosen its owner. Just like treasures, only the virtuous could obtain it. These people shouldn't have coveted Murongyu and coveted him. Moreover, Murongyu had a good relationship with Divine, Dr. Pei, and the sisters from the Ouyang family. If they wanted to force Murong-yu to hand it over, they would definitely fall out with divine Dr. Pei and the other two. However, many of them knew that this cultivation technique wasn't simple. For the sake of this cultivation technique, they might even fall out with divine Dr. Pei. Perhaps even divine Dr. Pei wouldn't be able to resist the temptation. Someone thought as they quickly closed in on Murong-yu. What are you trying to do? Ouyang Tong and Li Wuyo looked at those people angrily when they saw them approaching with ill intentions. Miss Ouyang, I'm sure you're interested in this cultivation technique. We're not trying to do anything. We just want Murong-yu to share this cultivation technique with everyone. I believe that this is everyone's wish. A middle-aged man looked at Ouyang Tong and the rest and said plainly, "That's right. As the saying goes, those who see it have a share. We should all get this cultivation technique," someone continued. "This cultivation technique belongs to Murong-yu alone. You can't snatch it. If you act recklessly, don't blame us for falling out with you." Ouyang Yan's face turned cold and murderous. Seeing Ouyang Tong's appearance, everyone couldn't help but hesitate. The forces that could reach this place were not simple. Naturally, they knew how powerful the Ouyang family was. If he made a move against Ouyang Yan today, he would be making an enemy of the Ouyang clan. Once the Ouyang family was enraged, none of them could bear the wrath of the Ouyang family. Could it be that your Ouyang family wants to monopolize it? At this time, a burst of cold laughter came from the crowd. Hearing that, everyone's hearts moved. After that, they coldly looked at Ouyang Yin and Lu Ming. "We're not interested in that cultivation technique. But if you dare to attack Murong-yu, then you will be the enemy of us sisters, the enemy of the Ouyang family. Try it if you don't want to die." Ouyang Tong had a fiery temper to begin with, so she shouted angrily. If it wasn't for the suppression of power here, she would have attacked long ago. "You make it sound so nice, but don't you want to monopolize it? Everyone, this cultivation technique must be magical and incomparably heaven-defying. Are you willing to watch it be taken away by others and not want a share of it? The Ouyang family is powerful, but can they fight against all of us? As long as we unite, the Ouyang family won't dare to attack us. And if we don't force Murong-yu to hand over the cultivation technique today, we won't have this chance in the future. Furthermore, if the Ouyang clan obtains this cultivation method, the Ouyang clan's strength will become even more powerful. I believe that there are enemies of the Ouyang family present. You don't want the Ouyang family to suppress you in one fell swoop, right?" The voice came from the crowd, making the Ouyang sisters furious. However, without power and divine thought, they didn't know who was talking. But it had to be said that this person's words were very provocative. At this time, countless people had been incited by him, especially the enemies of the Ouyang family. Those people looked at the Ouyang sisters with murderous intent, and their killing intent was overflowing. If they had the chance, they wouldn't mind killing the sisters. "What should we do?" Ouyang Tong looked at Ouyang Yin with worry in her eyes. "On account of Old Man Pei's status, we should protect Murong-yu. However, with so many people, it will be difficult to protect him with our strength." Ouyang Yin frowned slightly, and a trace of murderous intent shot out from her eyes. Ouyang Tong nodded. She knew the severity of the situation. "We can only try our best." Ouyang Yin sighed. "Two little girls. Very good. I'll make a trip to the Ouyang family." Suddenly, Old Man Pei's voice rang in their ears. At the same time, Old Man Pei's middle-aged man body shook and returned to his original sloppy appearance. Divine Dr. Pei. Seeing this scene, the crowd couldn't help but exclaim. Even the sisters couldn't help but widen their eyes. They didn't expect that the ordinary-looking middle-aged man beside them was Divine Dr. Pei. "Old Man Pei, so it's you. I should have thought of you." Ouyang Tong looked at Old Man Pei and gritted her teeth. Divine Dr. Pei has already agreed to make a trip to the family. Ouyang Yin hurriedly pulled Ouyang Tong back, afraid that she wouldn't be able to control herself. "You better not go back on your words. Otherwise, Ouyang Tong glared at Old Man Pei and snorted coldly. "Whoever dares to take a step forward today will be my enemy." After returning to his original identity, Divine Dr. Pei didn't do anything. He swept a glance at the crowd and said indifferently, "Swoosh." Countless people stopped in their tracks. With that one sentence, the greed in the hearts of countless people was strangled to death. Countless experts were intimidated. Divine Dr. Pei might be a loner. However, if one thought that he was easy to bully, one would be gravely mistaken. He had no power, no master, and no disciples. However, the number of people in the divine realm who had received his kindness and life-saving grace was definitely not a small number. As long as Divine Dr. Pei made a call, those who had received Divine Dr. Pei's favor would definitely scramble to respond. Moreover, there would definitely be a lot of people, and each of them was powerful. Even if they couldn't sweep across the entire divine world, they would be able to do whatever they wanted. Therefore, no one in the divine world dared to offend Divine Dr. Pei. This was because Divine Dr. Pei's hidden power was too terrifying. Therefore, when Old Man Pei appeared, the surrounding people instantly fell silent. However, no matter where they were, no matter which plane they were in, greed would always occupy the majority of people. After being intimidated by Divine Dr. Pei, there were still some people who couldn't hold back their greed and were itching to take action. Divine Dr. Pei, Murong Yu isn't your disciple. Aren't you being too nosy? A voice sounded from the crowd. Moreover, we don't intend to do anything to Murong Yu. We just want him to share the cultivation technique with us. That's right, Divine Dr. Pei. We just want to get our hands on the cultivation technique. Old Man Pei scanned the crowd, and his face turned cold. You have no fate with the cultivation technique. Even if Murong Yu is willing to give it to you, you won't be able to comprehend it. Moreover, the cultivation technique belongs to Murong Yu now. I'll say it again. If anyone dares to touch Murong Yu, you'll be my enemy. After saying this, Old Man Pei closed his eyes. Old Man Pei was going to protect Murong Yu. The crowd looked at each other. If Old Man Pei was going to protect Murong Yu, they wouldn't dare to make a move. Of course, if they were to attack together, they might be able to kill Divine Dr. Pei in this powerless world. However, would they dare to kill Divine Dr. Pei? Even if they could kill Divine Dr. Pei. However, they couldn't guarantee it. No matter what power they belonged to, the people who made a move today would die without a doubt. Although Divine Dr. Pei was dead, those who were indebted to him weren't. Moreover, there were many people who were close to Divine Dr. Pei. Those people would definitely take revenge for Divine Dr. Pei. Given their power, it wouldn't be difficult for them to find out the culprits. Rumble, at that moment, Murong Yu's body emitted a series of thunderous booms. As the power here was suppressed, Murong Yu's aura didn't leak out. However, the surrounding people were all looking at Murong Yu with shock in their eyes. This was because Murong Yu had already broken through to the late true God realm. Moreover, it seemed like he was still in the process of breaking through. Rumble. At this moment, the elemental energy in the heavenly chasm started to go berserk. Although the power in the heavenly chasm was suppressed, the elemental energy in the heavenly chasm was extremely dense. However, the heaven and earth yuan qi here was very rich and did not contain any poisonous gas. At this moment, the elemental energy in the heavenly chasm was especially frenzied. All of them swarmed towards Murong Yu. On the other hand, Murong Yu's body was like a bottomless pit as it devoured all of the elemental energy. In an instant, a gigantic tornado was formed beside Murong Yu. This kid is absorbing the elemental energy at a crazy rate. His cultivation level is still rising rapidly. Although Murong Yu didn't release his aura, everyone could see that his cultivation level was rising rapidly. Very quickly, he broke through from the middle true God realm to the late true God realm. However, this wasn't the end. Divine Dr. Pei, who knew that Murong Yu had 3 godheads, was shocked to see that other than the lightning divinity, the other 2 godheads were also breaking through at the same time. They were getting stronger and stronger. All 3 godheads were breaking through at the same time. Could be because of that technique. Everyone had different expressions on their faces when they saw Murong Yu breaking through. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.